So wonder if you're doing that kind of wonderment of editing, then I am going to be thoroughly impressed, right? So.
I don't think Eric's going to be doing that. If anything, he'd be putting ABBA to that guy.
Most overrated driving song. I like that, Rob. We'll get into that, I'm sure. So
It's
Donovan,
Paradise by the Dashboard Lights.
Yeah, Donovan texted me back. He said he is getting online, so he'll be there. He'll be here in a minute. So
I thought Donovan was dead. Or you mean not Donovan, the band guy? You mean another Donovan, right?
Yeah. Well, he's the band guy and the CEO of GarageRiot. So
okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was the Donovan.
No. He reacted the same way you did when we told him. We're like, hey, we're doing this like music. He's like, I'm there. I'm like, okay. So we'll just give him a minute.
So we have one more to join us.
Yeah, and Mountain Man. So it should be a minute or two.
It'd be like a fucking Brady Bunch screen. Like we'll have all these things. Like, you know, who's gonna be in the middle? Wait, Eric, can I go like this? Like in the Brady Bunch.
Yeah, right.
Howdy.
Hey, what's up, Donovan? What's going on, man?
Oh,
man, it'd be nice if Zoom wasn't a big pile of shit. It took me like 5 times to.
Zoom's a pile of shit. Fours is a pile of shit. Everything's a pile of shit.
Unless I'm winning, it's a pile of shit. All of it.
Well, I think you've met Mountain Man Dan before. He's going to be joining us here in a minute, but I want to introduce you virtually to Rob Lors, who's down in DC. He'll wave. And then we got Peter Klein from VETMotorsports over there, coming to us from Ohio. So it's going to be an interesting night. This is Brad's forte. He's the music guy, right? So I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Let me ping Mountain Man real quick and make sure he's jumping on, or he might be still driving home from work.
You might be dusting off the banjos.
Dude, he said he had like a 2-hour drive from where he was coming from. So,
well, that sucks. Oh my God, Rob.
He's gonna hold up signs.
No, Rob
I held up
his banjo.
I held up a banjo. I got 2 trombones in the back. I could pull those out too.
Well, I got some. If we're doing show and tell, here's my very first motorcycle helmet.
Ooh.
Where's your saxophone?
At the pawn shop. I sold that thing years ago.
Really?
Yeah. I got multiple trombones, a ukulele, a banjo, keyboard. I don't know what else.
Where's the 2 timpanis and the 2 tubas?
My brother's house. Which sounds funny, except that my brother's wife is a town sort of district music teacher up in Massachusetts. So literally they have a timpani and multiple tubas and euphoniums and clarinets and everything else in their house. And their car purchases were driven by what could actually fit a timpani. So early on, she got one of the like manual transmission Honda Element, because with the seats folded up, you could actually just slide a timpani in there and a tuba together at the same time and take it places.
I think that's a good topic to talk about tonight.
You can also fit
buying a car based on what instruments you can fit in it.
You can fit an 8x10 bass cabinet in a Honda Element.
Yep, you can fit a shit ton in a Honda Element.
You know what? You can fit a piccolo in. You can fit it in everything. So
Everything.
you know.
even your buttholes.
Oh, whoa, whoa! Where are we going here?
I'll save them for later, but I do have other musical instruments and vehicles stories that are kind of fun too. So
that's why we're here, Rob. That's what it's all about. All right, I don't know where the heck Dan is. I did literally just talk to him like a half an hour ago, so I don't know where the hell he is. But anyway, we could probably get started, and he could just jump on.
Do I need to turn off James Brown in the background? Is it too loud, or
I can't hear it at all.
Hear it.
All right, I'll just turn.
I'm going to change it to sorrowfully I can't hear it.
Yeah, right.
Hey, I'm in my mixed bag too. I got my car pictures on the wall and my drums right here. So it's
drummer.
Yeah, we're doing just for the call. Actually, it's for the lighting. I'm lying, but
you're so video conscious all the time.
My hair and makeup person didn't come in today, so I had to do my own hair.
You did a marvelous job.
Absolutely. Brad, if you're ready, we'll get going. Pete, do you have the verbiage up?
Yes, I do.
I love it, dude. It's going to be fantastic.
Hold on. Me. All right, sorry.
All right.
By the way, bass players never get the microphone, so I'm gonna totally whore this out.
Well, I've got some
Oh,
bass player
fuck.
names I'll send you.
So are you guys? Do you just want to go ahead and just do it? And
Well, Brad, we'll just do it in order. If you got it, Brad will go, then you'll go, and then I'll go, and it'll be perfect.
if I fuck it up, you'll just edit.
100%. You can always
Right.
redo it. I don't care.
I
All
think
right.
you should fuck it up on purpose. You make it authentic.
Right. Wait, are we recording this on reel to reel, or is this digital? Are we gonna dump it down?
This is going to be released on 8-track.
This is
Awesome.
100% Memorex. All right.
Does it? Oh, if it's on 8-track, is it like halfway through, coming to you live from GT, and then it fades back in? In Washington, like when they did the, it was like when they had the Boston on 8-track. I'm dating myself here. And
What's
halfway
going
through-
to happen
More-
is you're
more
going to
than a-
record it on 8-track, and
Right.
then it's never going to play because the 8-track players always fuck up like halfway
Right.
through.
It only works in the Gremlin that he had, or the Pacer,
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much.
So is there a format? I mean, you guys are talking about going in order. What's happening?
So we're doing to do the intro, and then Brad's going to just lead us into this jam session. So we got to get serious for the intro, and then after that, we can do whatever.
Yeah, and Eric's going to use his editing magic to
Right.
fix
100%.
whatever we fuck up. So
100%, as always.
Are you gonna use what's that? Alt tune our voices like they do all the new pop stars.
we're going to auto tune. Yeah,
Auto tune it.
We're gonna use the auto tune app, so it'll be pretty awesome.
I'm just
Yeah.
I'm gonna play the part of Little John. I'm like, yeah, what?
What?
And the rest,
Yeah.
the rest of us can all be T-Pain. It'll be great.
Right.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, Brad, whenever you're ready, buddy.
All right. Anyone that knows me knows I have two passions in life: cars and music. And often I find that these two passions overlap or have an indirect relationship with each other.
Well, we're gonna do that over again.
Hang on. I don't know how to disconnect that from my Mac and my phone at the same time. Sorry.
That's okay.
Because it's my daughter's friend and she's persistent. She'll call back like 5 times in a row until she gets her. So let me figure out how to turn that off on the Mac.
That's
Good
awesome, by the way. So one of the few things I've watched every single day throughout the pandemic is Lee Sklar, who's ridiculous bass player, has done a daily sort of video log where he just plays different music, and he'll tell stories from when he was on the road with literally everybody on the planet. And frequently, like, you'll see a video and he'll come in and be like, "Fucking phones." Like, I was 20 minutes into this ridiculous story of what was going on when I met blah, 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 blah. And we were playing this show in Zurich, and then the phone rings, and no, my car warranty is fucking fine. So now I'm starting all over again to tell the same goddamn stories.
Oh
And
my
like,
God.
it's at least once a week where he'll just start bitching and moaning about like these guys calling in. I'll bring him up later though. He's got a pretty sweet car and ties into music as well.
Well, the end of the story is he had to get a pack of all brown M&Ms for Ozzy, and he had to beat the shopkeeper to death with his own shoes.
Exactly.
The best part of
Hopefully
that,
that wasn't Lee, because Lee would be hilarious to hear say that. But
I love the, hey, who's the old lady? That's my old lady.
Oh God.
So I would say, Brad, after we get started, maybe have everybody talk about their connection to music, since everybody but myself is musically inclined. So,
Right.
maybe do that and then lead into whatever you're going to lead into, because I think that's important to set the,
Of course.
the credibility there, right?
Yeah.
All right, Donovan, did you turn off your phone?
Well, it's ringing on my Mac is the problem too. I tell you what, just to be sure, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a pain in the ass. Let me just run up and tell her to make sure we got communications good. I'll be right.
Yeah. No worries. We'll
could
get.
just mute too.
Actually, I could just record the intro now.
Yeah, do the intro now while he's gone.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone that knows me knows I have two passions in life: cars and music. And often I find that these two passions overlap or have an indirect relationship with each other. I feel that there is a deep-seated connection, as both worlds can ignite feelings and emotions unlike anything else on the planet. Today on the show, we'll talk about that connection, as well as other car and music adjacent musings and topics.
Coming to you live from WGTM studio in the basements of Washington, D.C., it's Break Fix with Brad and Eric. Take it away, Brad and Eric.
Right you are, Pete. And please join me in welcoming back Pete Klein from VETMotorsports, along with Donovan Lara from GarageRiot, and GTM members Rob Lures and Mountain Man Dan. All right, now we're all back. So Brad, it's up to you. It's your show now.
So I guess what we should do is, first of all, just kind of go around the horn and kind of, I mean, you all volunteered to be on this episode. I know Eric reached out and we were like, hey, we're looking for people for a show. We've got an idea. So just kind of give some, I guess, history into your car/musical background and why you decided you wanted to be on the show. And we'll just go around the horn. I guess I'll start with Rob. I know you've got a huge musical history. I think, what was it, your uncle taking you around Boston area, all kinds of shows and everything?
Yeah, you name it, there's a history there. Where to start? So my parents, my mom was a soundboard operator at the original Woodstock. I'll put it that way to begin with. So their album collection was completely off the hook. They've met everybody under the sun. My dad, they met when they went to college at Northeastern, and he had a Volkswagen bus there that they would wheel all the stuff from the radio studio from Northeastern out to the cliffs over the beach and have full weekend-long beach parties with just the whole show. The Northeastern radio shows from the overlook over the beach, just blasting music out for the whole time. And so this is sort of the culture I was raised in. Of we always had pretty ridiculous speakers and pretty much every album you can imagine, and every type of music. You know, I think the earliest band I ever listened to was The Police, and my mom was a guitar player as well. And so that started everything. I myself picked up trombone playing, played with a bunch of ska bands all over the place. In addition, my uncle is was a record producer for hardcore bands, sort of a few steps beyond, noise bands and hardcore, etc. And so he would, at a pretty young age in early high school, he was the one who would drop off mixtapes at my house for every possible excuse he could, and then give me the list of every tiny 5-person size club up to the big clubs and every show that was possibly going on. And so we were always at the forefront of hearing all that. And as you got further along in high school, there was a ton of vehicular shenanigans and getting to shows as a 16-and-a-half-year-old and out until 3 a.m. at some tertiary show you were at after the 2 shows after the first show was over, in someone's either basement or Newbury Comics back room or wherever it might happen to be. And so that's sort of where it began, that and then into car stereos and into every possible type of music, from the trombone history to a little bit of banjo playing to all sorts of stuff. And so you name it, I listen to it, and you name it, I'll drive it. So it all sort of dovetails together pretty well.
So let's go with Donovan.
Always around music, even when I was a kid. I mean, we were talking a minute ago about the hi-fi speakers that were 3 feet tall, blasting Zeppelin and whatever. It was always going by that. But became a musician really to get out of class. I probably wasn't the best student, and in 5th grade they said, hey, anybody that wants to play music, an instrument, come to the band room. So me and my 2 hooligan buddies went to the band room, and the only instruments that we thought were cool enough were drums. So we started playing, and I was really the only one that stuck with it. And at the same time, my mom had gotten remarried to a musician who was fairly successful in the Atlanta area, and he had a studio in the house. So I was always around that. Got into, moved from obviously concert percussion to drum set, started playing. Played all the way through high school. Actually paid my way through college on a jazz band scholarship, which was cool. I did that. I did basketball band and show choir, anything I could do. But I got in a band in college that was pretty successful. And I have to think now, if social media had been back, around back then, we might have been something. But we played the college circuit across the Southeast, and were pretty big deal, I guess. Making a lot of money in college. Did that, and then went on to continue to play. I'm still in a band, Twice Over Midnight. We've got a disc out, got some videos out for the previous iterations of the band, so I keep it going. But that's kind of, in a nutshell, I guess that's it. My ex-wife was a singer, so I've always been around that. And music is still really a important part of our household right now. There's always music going on. Somebody's always singing. We got pianos all over. There's drum sets back here. I mean, it's just kind of a ongoing thing with us.
Is that when we ask you, Donovan, when the reunion tour is with your ex-wife, if you were in the band, or does that not happen? I'm sorry. Did I speak out of turn? I apologize. Is that,
if we were into the same type of music, maybe that would work out. But, I don't know. She's
So no reunion tour. That's what I'm hearing
No,
right now.
probably not
What-
anytime.
Oh,
soon.
okay. Okay. Just that,
What-
I just wanted to clarify.
What
wanna
was
know
the
how I can
what
get
was
a
the band?
demo.
I want to know what the band was that was touring in the southeast and such.
Man, the worst band name ever. We were called Cool Beans. And yeah, horrible. I didn't come up with a name, but it's funny, you know, I was just going through some stuff the other day in the basement, and I found one of our flyers, and like Vertical Horizon was on the bill with us, and you know, we did some crazy things. One of the weirdest gigs I think we ever had, because we were kind of like a Widespread Panic, Grateful Dead band, which wasn't music I necessarily listened to. I was more of a 311, you know, that kind of guy, and but that was the big deal. And we somehow, I mean, we were getting booked a lot, and we somehow got booked for, I don't know if you guys remember the band. I think they were called All for One. They were like a boy band. We opened up for them in a baseball field in Huntsville, Alabama. So you can imagine you've got, you know, 12, 13-year-old girls freaking out over this band. Here we are, you know, right? We're playing, you know, Grateful Dead and all the stuff that they've never even heard of. That was interesting. And in the meantime, they set us up in the front of the stage. So, you know, my drums were in front of the drum riser, and they started testing the lights while we were playing. And I don't know if you guys have ever been close to par cans that big, but I thought I was going to catch on fire. It was just constant heat. So not the most cringeworthy gig I ever played. Maybe we'll talk about that later, but it was certainly up there.
All right, who's going next? Mountain Man or Pete?
I think we should go to Pete and then finish off with the GTMOGs.
So, for those of you listening, this is Pete Klein. I did the intro. We're in the basement of the studios. It's somewhere in Washington, D.C. I didn't really have the illustrious start that some of the other presenters have talked about. My parents burned records for a living. No, I'm just kidding. They did nothing like that. So I didn't really get into music until really I got into college. I mean, I grew up in Cleveland, was really into sports. I tried playing bass, you know, when I was in high school, but it really didn't pan out that great. But I loved rock and roll, and I loved music. And so when I was in high school, I was a big metal head. I mean, and if you grew up in Cleveland, that's kind of, I mean, it is heavy metal central. You know, I went to shows like the reunion tour for Deep Purple on the first iteration of that with Ian Gillan and you know, Jimmy Blackmore and all that. I did the Roger Waters Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, and that was his first time doing his solo work right after he left Pink Floyd or Gilmore kicked him out or whatever. I saw some amazing shows in Cleveland and really didn't pick up playing music until college, like I said. And then I went to Ohio State and ended up picking up bass down there and getting involved in a band. And, you know, over the course of 20 years, we had a recording contract, and I would say toured with my hand quotes in the air, you know, the country, and played South by Southwest and North by Northeast and North by Northwest, New York City, and did some pretty cool things. We opened up for a band called Dig. I don't know if they were out from the LA scene. Opened up for, I think, Creed, the early version of Creed, right before they broke huge. But, you know, we were more like Built to Spill or Neil Young with an alternate kind of vibe. And I mean, Neil Young kind of like Live Rust, but with not an emo thing, but it was really kind of a country-esque Americana kind of vibe. And, you know, I did that for, you know, 20 plus years, and really, and I'm sure everybody here has these stories of being in bands. It's like being in a marriage with, you know, X number of people that are, and after a while I just got, you know, I got kind of burnt out from it. And then I decided to go motorcycle racing. So I went from being challenged emotionally by 4 or 5 guys and being stuck in an Econoline van with a bunch of guys that are overly flatulent to, you know, driving around in a van with a motorcycle in the back and road racing. So, I mean, that's more or less my background.
Was your pit crew overly flatulent as well?
Well, pit crew was me of one. So yes, consistently overly flatulent. Yes, I am.
It sounds like a great band name.
Overly flatulent. I like that. It's good.
Overly flatulent. Donovan, what was, by the way, I know we got to get to Mountain Man, Dan. Donovan, what was the name of your band again?
Cool Beans.
And their album Overly Flatulent.
No, the yeah, Overly Flatulent. Is that your first release?
Might as well have been. Yeah.
Sorry, Donovan was like, these guys are sons
Was
of
your first release Overly Flatulent? Well done.
Yeah.
Well played. Well played.
Oh, by the way, so Rob asked, so the band that I was in was called Silo the Husky. So that might be on par with Cool Beans. So it's SILOTHEHUSKIE, not Y.
No,
For
that's
God's
still
sake.
better. In fact, I don't even refer to that band as Cool Beans. I just call us the Beans. So when somebody says, "Oh yeah, that's back in the Beans days," so which it really isn't any better, but you know.
But I know we got to talk to Mountain Man Dan, but real quick, Rob and Donovan, are we giving GTM permission to use, or GTM permission? Never mind, permission to use are we basically signing off on them using our music for the show?
We
Are we
could
gonna
if
get
you
paid?
guys want to.
Are we going to get paid royalties?
I mean, a penny on a penny, I suppose.
Yeah, it wouldn't be any Cool Beans music though. It would be the current band. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's cool.
Nice.
Royalties might be Jaeger and gummy bears though.
100% on that one. That's for sure.
Haribo.
I went cheap tonight. I got Mott's gummy bears this time. Stole them from the kids.
That is cheap.
Wow.
All right, let's go to Mountain Man Dan. So do you have a musical background, or are you like Eric? You're just a hobbyist?
So my musical background started when I was a kid, for the fact that my mom and stepfather used to have parties at the house, and friends would come over and they would bring their instruments. And this is back in the mid 80s. And so one of the friends, Rick, he had an organ, proper organ, took up like the whole bed of his truck that he brought over to the house. We had to move everything around the house to get it into the house. It took like 6 people to move it. They brought it over just for a party one weekend, and then it stayed there for like 3 weeks before he took it back home. But they'd always bring their guitars and stuff like that. I always had interest in learning guitar, but my age, my hands being so small, I couldn't stretch my fingers out far enough to hit the chords. So one of the guys decided, hey, I'll bring a mandolin. So I brought a mandolin. I learned my chords initially on mandolin. And then like one of the guys showed up, because I used to play a lot of like bluegrassy type stuff or like classic rock type stuff. And so they showed up with a banjo one time, and I just started plucking on it, having fun with it. And then from there in school, I wanted to play saxophone, but unfortunately my family didn't have the money to afford one, which just by chance someone in the family had a clarinet. So I got stuck with a clarinet and played that for a couple of years. And then I wound up being in a drum corps for a little while, because my sister was in a majorettes where she twirled batons and all that pretty stuff in parades. And I got stuck with going along all the time, and it was boring for me. So initially, me and my brother were stuck. We were like, whenever a group would come through and there's 2 people carrying the flag that says what the group is, that was me and my brother for a good while before they decided to open up and do a drum corps. So I started doing that, and I did a little bit with toms and a little bit with the bass drum. And then I moved on to bigger. I kind of got out of it because by that time I was having a license and wasn't as interested in that portion of it. But a friend of mine's brother had a band that was doing pretty decent locally on the local scene. And so I kind of roadied for them for a while because it was fun to just go hang out at the clubs with them.
I can see that.
And the cool thing is, because even though I wasn't 21, I could get into the clubs because I was roadieing. So I'd be hanging out in the crowd being underage. And like back then in the 90s, nobody cared. So
You also had that beard too.
Yeah, he's had that since the 80s. What are you talking about?
I was born with it. So, but yeah, so I used to, whenever they would practice and stuff, I'd get on stage and sing their songs and stuff. But I always, like, at one point they asked if I wanted to sing for them. I had too much stage fright to do it. But they wound up getting another singer, and they actually almost had a record deal. And then the band broke up like shortly after they were in the talks for a record deal. And then they wound up splitting up. So unfortunately, I never went anywhere.
I have a feeling if I heard you sing, which I've never heard you sing, it would end up something along the lines of Randy Travis. So we're just going to leave that where it is. But,
If you go to a concert with him, you'll hear him sing.
oh, really? Oh, dang.
Yes, you will.
So I gotta share a little tidbit though. And this is something that I don't even know that Brad knows. So I do come from a musical family. I come from some Renaissance artists as well, right?
And the kazoos don't count.
Hey, piccolo, all right. But seriously, no, my grandfather, especially, he would build instruments from scratch. So there's all these stories, and I don't have to share all of them, but basically, you know, guitars, violins, like all sorts of stuff. He would make his own wood, do all this crazy stuff. So at one point, my grandfather decided he was going to build accordions, right? And that's a typical Italian thing to do. But in their case, he's old school. So this is not the accordion with the keyboard, like, you know, the black and whites. This is actually the old school push button kind, right? On both sides, and not a squeeze box. This is a full size. Okay. So he built one for me. He built one for my uncle, my cousin, stuff like that. And so all built from scratch and all this kind of thing. He brought it over here one year for Christmas. It's at my mom's house. And he proceeded to try to teach me to play over the 2 weeks that they were here on vacation. And I tell you what, I am not musically inclined. And after that horrendous experience of trying to learn an accordion, which is extremely difficult, I never picked up an instrument ever again. But I have a huge appreciation for music. I do not like polka. I'm just going to throw that out there. And I have no affiliation with that whatsoever. But I just thought that was just fun to share.
I can see you in it, like the.
No,
I gotta ask though. Another Montestelli tradition is using copper pipe for like car parts and stuff. Did this accordion have copper piping anywhere?
It did have copper piping, but it did have copper rivets and a lot of other stuff. So it's just, it goes with the territory. It's par for the course. So anyway, Brad, you played an instrument in school. I know that. You were a band geek.
So yeah, I started playing saxophone back in 5th grade, and I played all the way through high school and some college. I had a scholarship to DeMatha, you know, a music scholarship for saxophone and everything, and it was great. I mean, I was good. You know, I had fun and everything, but I lost interest in playing that. I always wanted to play guitar or something cool. So I tried teaching myself, and I was terrible at it. I'm still terrible at it, and I pick it up every once in a while. But then I really kind of started I love live music. So there was a time over, you know, not recently, but about 5 or 6 years ago, I just started going to concerts like crazy, even from high school. And I was going to concerts probably 2 to 3 to 4 a month, you know, and just there's something about music. I don't know. I don't have that much to say about my musical background, just that I love music. And ever from when I was a little child, you know, riding around in the car with my dad and my mom, and I was the first person, actually the only person in my family to actually play an instrument, but we all have like an appreciation for it, and just making playlists and riding around to the beach and just listening to the tunes and everything, and just getting in the car and going for a ride, no particular place to go, and just listening to songs and everything. And those are some of my fondest memories with my parents and everything. So it's just, that has stuck with me, you know, to this day. And I just love music, I guess.
So with that, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask a question. I mean, so I think, is that like how you guys feel about music though? Is that like an escapism? You know what I mean? And I don't mean escape from running from something, but it's able to transport you somewhere, right? Brad, is that kind of what you're is that kind of what you're touching upon?
It definitely transports me somewhere, and it puts me in a different mindset, or, you know, certain music can make me feel a certain way. So it's an emotional release, pretty much. And so if I'm feeling a certain way, if I'm angry, I'll go listen to something to help me kind of get that frustration or that anger out. If I'm feeling happy, I mean, you can tell by my mood by kind of like the music that I'm listening to, you know, pretty much. But yeah, it's kind of like an escape from the idiocy of normal life.
I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, man, because when I've ridden with you in the car for hours and hours. We even had one trip when it was completely silent.
Oh my God. You know why? Because the only station your truck got was NPR. And we were driving 13 hours from Maryland to fucking Kentucky, and we couldn't get NPR in every state, you asshole. So it was silence for like.
Yeah, but when I ride with you, it's the opposite. All I hear is So I can't tell if you're happy or sad or getting revved up. It all sounds like somebody's eating rocks. Like to me,
but it sounds different to me. So what you hear is like someone just gargling nails. It actually does sound different to me. I've developed that, that ear for the little nuances and the screaming and the growling and all that good stuff.
Just, you know what, Eric, the next time you get him in the car, get Brad in the car, get him in the car during NPR's pledge drive. And that
not to knock on NPR, because the Tiny Desk series on YouTube is amazing.
That is excellent. That's good music.
For a while.
Yeah. All right, so that's our musical backgrounds, but why the hell are we on a car podcast?
Well,
That's
real
a
quick,
good question.
one thing that you were saying, how music can be an escape or whatever. I've always thought music is a universal language, because it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If a song comes on that has a good beat, it doesn't matter if you know the words to it or not. You'll still like tap your foot, move your head. And it's like, for me, music is the universal language.
Boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats.
That's the one thing that nobody hates, right? I can't think of anybody that hates music. I mean, they may hate certain disciplines or genres of music.
Yeah.
It's like the one common thread across everybody.
And to go ahead,
I also
Rob.
find that I use music to focus. Like someone laughed once, said like, "Oh, I have to write this big paper, and how do people do that with music?" And I was like right now I'm sitting here and I can hear my kids playing because they're not quite asleep. I can hear a helicopter going by. I can hear cars going by. I hear like 75 noises whereas if I need to like sit and focus, I put on like my Sirius audiophile headphones and I blast something so that my brain can only hear that music, and it cuts it down to just one thing. And by doing so, my ability to focus on that second thing is infinitely better, while especially if something I know, I can sit there and bop along to it. As you said, it's that bopping along, but it's just so ingrained. It eliminates every other distraction from my existence, but just the music and what I'm doing. And it's so much simpler for me at that point.
So I'm with you on that, Rob. And my wife knows that when the house and the down tempo and a lot of that stuff starts playing, I'm either writing code or I'm writing an article for, the club or something like that. So it does, you're right. It helps me align in a certain way and gets me focused. And for whatever reason, just having that soundtrack in the background, even if it's something, down tempo or whatever, it helps me filter out the rest of what's going on.
And to make the connection between music and cars, because we are a car podcast after all, to Peter's question about, is it like an escape?
I got to stop right there.
You're Pete, right? Not Peter?
Yeah, not Peter. No, it's just Pete. I mean, that's...
To Mr. Klein's question.
Oh, man.
It's sir or overlord to you, sir. It's overlord, sir.
Herr Kline. Just go with Herr Kline.
To Grand Overlord Klein.
Right.
His question about escapism, music can be an escape, but obviously cars and driving, that's an escape as well. I mean, there's only one way to get away from something, and stop in your car and drive the fuck away.
I mean, I think music and cars is like red wine and steak, right? I mean, it's one of those pairings that just goes well together. And I think it opens the floor up to what's that song or that album or that band that kind of gets you revved up, or is it the right song or album for when you're out there on a twisty mountain road? I mean, let's go with Donovan. He's on Tail of the Dragon on the regular. I mean, what are you playing when you're out there on the mountain?
Eye of the Tiger.
Man, it varies. Honestly, I listen to music on the way, but when I'm on the road, it's windows down, listen to the exhaust and sound the engine. But, I think it's really interesting for me, early on, it was just, whatever I could turn on that was loud and made a lot of noise. And, depending on where I'm going, it does kind of turn into a soundtrack for me. Like I go to visit my family in Florida, and I'll take the interstate as far as I can. Then I get on back roads and, like out of cell phone range kind of back roads. And, I'll put on whatever it is, some kind of alternative, Paramore used to be big, but Phanagram's a big, I love Phanagram, stuff like that. And you're talking about the escape part of it. And for me, it's always like this alternative track that I haven't heard on the radio 1,500 times, that kind of thing. So, it really does kind of transcend, especially you get on a road. There's one particular piece of this road where it's an old logging road, and half the time it's all just torn down on the side, and all you can see is blue sky. You've got this amazing music soundtrack going on. So I think for me, it's that. You know, I don't really. It's been a while since I really gotten jacked up, you know, for you know, a car, you know, some kind of outing like that. But I can tell you, I had a buddy of mine's, Gallardo, for a couple weeks, and Firestarter, Prodigy, all those, a Spitfire, that was on demand. And every time we got in that car, it was like crank it up and just haul ass. So that was probably.
I tell you what, Minefields by Prodigy is one of those dump it in fourth and see how fast it goes type of songs. The song from The Matrix, that's legit right there. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yes, he did.
That was good. That was it. That was it.
How about Pete? You go.
I mean, I think for me, it really, and I try to put some really serious thought into us, even though we're having a great time talking about it. You know, it's whatever mood I'm in is what's playing on the radio, right? And so, you know, my motorsports background, you know, from racing motorcycles and stuff, you know, typically if I'm at the line for autocross now, and you know, I may be cranking Queens of the Stone Age up until the point where, you know, I'm up next or whatever, or but it just depends on what's going on. And I think for me, I think music is a soundtrack, and it sets the mood and tempo for whatever I'm doing. And I think especially depending on the mindset, that it amplifies and provides a lot of color to what's happening. And I can't really explain it any more than that, than just it fills my day with immense joy, no matter what I'm listening to, you know. But I tend to pick and choose. I have my favorite songs, but I tend to pick and choose really where my mood's at, and that's what I'm going to listen to for a while. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
But there's not one song where you pull the scrunchie out of your ponytail and start doing donuts in your IROC Z.
Yeah, IROC Z. No, I think I love a great rock anthem, right? And I think rock anthems in cars go well together, right? And so if you had to say, okay, Pete, if you're in the car and you're listening, what anthem would you play? Because you're from Cleveland and you love heavy metal, but you love hard rock, what would you be listening to? So I would tell you right now, Boston, More Than a Feeling, and I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, is like the quintessential rock anthem. Or Kiss, Detroit Rock City, or Van Halen, anything Van Halen up to Diver Down. So you pick anything out of their catalog is a great summer rock anthem song. Love Comes Walking In, the end is great. So those are the songs I would gravitate to. But you know, Boston was the first album I ever had next to Houses of the Holy with Led Zeppelin, first serious record. So I'm going to say that song, More Than a Feeling.
Barchetta.
Yeah, I mean,
Rush claimed they got their start in Cleveland, wasn't it? They played the long play. What was it, Blue Collar Man or whatever the song is?
Hardworking Man.
Yeah. That they played that always at midnight on Sunday on WMMS. They played that song and Maggot Brain. So it's an actual song. Look it up. So that's I'm sorry if I skirted the question, but that's kind of where my headspace at when I'm listening to music in the car. Boston.
So something I had like 3 different things in here, but so something I miss from back in the day, call it whatever, late 90s-ish, I think for me, in this case, was actually the music discovery aspect of driving, right? So I used to frequently drive from like my parents' house out to UMass, which is where I went to school. And there's a pretty decent, you have to climb a mountain up sort of a nice twisty road. And I had, 16 valve Scirocco for a while in there. And at the very end, the different things. And I'd be driving up that road and like, I was listening to some random station. It's the middle of the night. And the first time I ever heard, and this is where it gets interesting to me, is maybe it's because of my background playing in jazz bands and big bands and ska bands and things, but there was this brand new album by Michel Camilo, who was a Latin jazz pianist, and he had done his very first ever big band album. This thing called Hot House, and there was a song on it that was just like I'm driving, and as the song built in crescendo, just the way the rhythm kept getting faster and faster, just the way it accelerated was on a different planet. And by the end of the song, like the song's like a 7.5, 8-minute long song. By the end of the song, I'm doing like the car is barely staying together with the speed I'm going. I literally had to pull over because I was just drenched in sweat from like the act of listening to it, because something about it was just so driving. And it was different. Like other times I love like hard rock goes very well together with fast driving, but there's the discovery of different styles of music that can actually compel you to do those kind of things in a different way in a car. It was the first time I'd ever heard that. I went and seeked out the album, and it became this huge thing. I was a music minor in college as well, but as everybody started to listen to this album and realized that it was one of those albums where that it was never actually done live because they couldn't get the level of complexity was just never done in one take. It took them too many takes from all the different musicians to get it. And these were like the best, studio musicians across the board and the horn sections and everything. But I just vividly, this is at this point, whatever, 20, 30, whoever knows, years ago. But I can vividly remember having to pull over in the middle of the night. Windows were down, the sunroof was open. This was just blasting out of, I built up the whole stereo in this thing too. And it was just exhausting at how like fast I was driving and just how in sync with the music I was from something that wasn't expected, right? It wasn't hard rock. It wasn't alternative. It wasn't any of those things. It was literally like big band Latin jazz stuff, but it was just amazing that sort of the way it all felt at that moment.
Yeah. And for me, like when, driving around in cars and listening to music, I mean, that's something I did before I could even walk. I mean, my family, we were always on the move. We were going to the beach. We were going to, to a trail to go bike riding or walking or whatever. And, and there's always music on in the car. I remember distinctly, I get very distinct memories of riding to the beach to Ocean City with my mom, and we're listening to the Moody Blues, and her favorite song comes on, and she's sitting there belting out the lyrics at the top of her lungs, and I'm like a 2-year-old sitting in the passenger seat looking at her with awe. And the same thing with Michael Jackson and Elton John, just all the time. And my dad, we'd go to Florida every year, 2 to 3 times a year, and he would spend hours, if not days, just crafting the perfect playlist for this 18-hour trip. And it's on cassette. So we're flipping the cassette over, listening to the same songs like 10 times. And then I discovered my favorite band when I was a car porter at a dealership locally here. And I had to take the cars and wash them and fill them up with gas. And one of my favorite things to do, because all the cars came with a free subscription of Sirius XM, is as soon as I got in the car, I would tune it to Liquid Metal and turn it up. And I left it that way for the customers. I know they loved it. It was great for them. But one time I did it, and then Opeth's Ghost Reveries was on, and I was like, what the fuck is this? My mind was completely blown. I was just sitting there, and you wouldn't think that like metal music can bring you to tears, but I mean, I'm such an emotional guy anyway. Like listening to some of this music, it brings me to tears, just tears of sadness, tears of joy, whatever. And I found, them, and actually I was at that one of the concerts. I drove up to Philadelphia with a couple of our club members, and we went to see them. I've been in New York to see them, and it's like I've been following them around ever since. And that's because I was working at a car dealership, moving cars around. I just happened upon them, and it was just amazing.
It's that discovery. No, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Mountain Man Dan?
Well, would you say though, thinking about the Michelle Camilo comment, amazing piano player, by the way. And if you listen to him, the thing that's really kind of enticing about it is you can hear him in the background going like he's singing what he's saying it's incredible, and it draws you in. And it made me think about it, really, is there 2 states of driving with music? I mean, I think there's the escapism mode, right? Where I'm listening to music that's making me think of being somewhere else. And then there's like the prodigy where I'm like, okay, I'm all jacked up. I want to feel every corner. I want to feel the performance of this car. I think they're different, but to me, that when you guys are talking about it, that sounds like the 2 states, other than you're just cruising to McDonald's or something. But, when you're really
that's when you listen to MC Hammer. What are you talking about?
More with the experience, then I think it's, for me anyway, it's either I'm out of my head somewhere and I'm appreciating the drive, or I'm really in the moment with the car itself, trying to be one with it.
Well, and to kind of piggyback on that, the big thing about music is you feel it. It's not just something you're listening to. You actually can feel it. It either gets you amped up, it's where I know guys that used to wrestle and everything, and they'd listen to like stuff to get them amped up before they went out on the mat. And then like guys that race and stuff will listen to certain stuff. But I think like for me, like the initial connection of cars and music was when I got my license. One of the first modifications I did to my car was improve the stereo system, you know, because that's what you did. You put big speakers in there, put an amp in there, and you did that to where you could just ride around, everybody heard your music. And of course, get cops called on you quite a bit, but that was part of growing up.
Because you're all about that bass.
Yeah.
So just to jump on that for a second, I wonder if there's a connection there, right? So everybody I knew who ended up in cars, like my brother's a mechanic, everybody did get their start of like, I can replace a speaker, right? And so replacing a speaker was like on day one was I got to be able to take a door panel off. I got to be able to not screw up the windows, the locks, everything else. I'm replacing speakers. I got to figure out how to run wires to amplifiers and how to not fry myself on the battery a second time or a third time. And like as a gateway drug, like music gets you into comfort with the fact that a car is just a machine, and no matter how complex you're doing it, at some point you can just take it apart and figure it out. But that's sort of like a huge gateway into being a car buff, right? Is that hands-on attention that you get from that simplistic car stereotype stuff that
new cars
everybody did first.
And new cars have taken that away from us, as if you think about it.
The head units a lot have. I've taken brand new cars still apart to do speaker changes, but like, yeah, the degree to which I knew how to take out a head unit and take apart a dashboard and how to funnel everything around, that's sort of gone, because now they all use fully integrated. Where you're doing that, you got to cut reams of plastic.
All that stuff was connected to the clutch pedal, right? So it all went at the same time.
And funny to your point, Rob. I mean, around the club, it's a big joke, you know, between us that Eric built my car. He's the one that does all the work on it and everything. It's funny because I won't touch my car. I mean, I will. I'm trying to learn, but it's hard for me to get the confidence to go in and, you know, do a brake swap or, you know, suspension swap or something like that in the car. But I will take apart a dash and I will pull out the head unit and the speakers and all the wiring and all that other bullshit and put in all brand new stuff because I've done it before. You know, it's you know, I don't know.
Which is funny because when we stripped the black GTI, I had Brad do all the interior work because he had a lot more experience in being delicate. And surprisingly, with his big sausage hands, he was way more delicate than most of the other people would be. So I was very proud of him for that.
No,
but since
it is interesting because Ryan Compton, who's on this as well with all of his TTs, we were at VIR and who was sitting there, he's like, hey, I bought this detachable steering wheel and I bought all the hub stuff and I just don't really want to do this. And he's a guy, for those who know, who's like, he's taken apart cars and rebuilt them all the time. Like he loves doing that kind of stuff. But he had this inherent fear of like, I don't want to have to take the steering wheel off and how am I going to wire this up? And I literally was like 9 p.m. We're sitting in the garages at VIR and I was like, I'll just do it. It's not a big deal. And the act of taking it apart was literally, I was like, he's like, well, have you done this before? And I was like, I did it once to my Miata, but I mean, I'll figure it out on the fly. Who cares? And like, we did it perfectly. It took us all of an hour, maybe, you know, learning it on the fly. But it was the beginning of I can take anything apart from a stereo's perspective, translated into I can work on these cars in the same way.
I wanted to actually, I think you've touched upon something here. I actually want to take it one step further because the majority of people here have been on the road with the band or touring with the band. And I think there has to be a certain amount of self-reliance if you're in a vehicle far from home with a bunch of other people and it breaks down. You've got to have that ingenuity to fix it. It's no different than if you're towing a car to a racetrack or trying to transport yourself to VAR or Mid-Ohio, but it's the same thing, except you've got a van full of equipment and you've got to figure out if it breaks down, how can I get it fixed and how can I get to the next show or whatever. And I think, I don't know if Donovan or Rob or Mountain Man Dan can, I know I certainly have my stories, but I'm sure you guys have your stories as well, right?
Yeah, a lot of times in the middle of nowhere and the back roads, you know, pre-cell phone days and all that stuff too, for sure. No wiring, thankfully, but always, you know, a tire or a transmission issue or, you know, something like that constantly.
Yeah, I got a story for you guys. So we had a show in Youngstown and we were driving back and we had an extended Econoline 150 van with the inline 6. And I think it was like an 89 or something like that. And we had built a partition of between the back area to put all the equipment and then in the seating area. And it wasn't a window van, right? It was like a workman's van. So the one slide door on the right-hand side, which is the passenger side, there was a huge window, but on the other side, it was just nothing. So like if you wanted to look out to see where you're going, all you could see was everything going by. So we broke down right outside of State Route 57 on I-76 outside of Rittman, Ohio. And we ended up calling a tow truck because we had AAA. And so 3 of us got in the front seat of the tow truck, but we didn't tell the tow truck driver that there were other band members, and they hid in the back of the van, and they towed the van all the way from Rittman on the exit of Rittman on I-76 back to Columbus. And they were all drunk. And so by that, they had no place to pee. They, you know what I mean? They were basically stuck in the back of this van for 2 hours.
I have to say something. You know when somebody's from Ohio because they have to tell a story by giving you all of the intersecting highways to a location. It is something I've just noticed from my in-laws. My wife's from Ohio. It's the funniest thing. So I totally appreciate that. And I do appreciate that partition you guys set up because that way the flatulence could be even tighter.
Right. We compress the air. Exactly.
It doesn't seem like anybody in any band van, because we had the same, kind of thing, ever knew anything about the exhaust, because there was always an exhaust leak in every single van we ever had. And we always fought over who sat in the cave. That's what we called in the back, in the very back. And you always,
like Cheech and Chong, except you were just getting monoxide poisoning.
Well, we had a percussionist that carried a 3-foot bong in the van. So we were always like clam bake, and then she got that, and then the exhaust. And so it was just whoever got the short straw was screwed in the back. So yeah.
What about you, Rob?
Oh, in terms of silly, I mean, there's too many to count is the problem. I think the most fun ones were, we were out in Northampton and I played with an opening band prior to the Bosstones playing a show. And I had known all the Mighty Mighty Bosstones guys for a while. I'd played with them in a few gigs. And so I wasn't supposed to be playing with them this gig, and they decided to let me play afterwards. So I played with them, and they were like, "Oh, we have another show tonight at like 3 a.m. back in Boston." And I was like, "Okay." And so I figured we're taking the big van. The van had already left because we were all just sort of hanging out chatting. So we all piled into their Volkswagen Fox. So this was a 2-door Fox with the entire band in it, plus me. They threw me in as well. I had with my trombone. And I remember being on like the Mass Pike halfway down the road, and the alternator died. So the headlights slowly died. The whole thing came down. And luckily there was enough crap in the they actually, like, they had a bunch of replacement parts for this thing because they broke down all the time. But none of them knew how to do anything. So I distinctly remember on the side of I-90 in Massachusetts, replacing the alternator in a VW Fox so that myself and the rest of the Bosstones could get to the gig that was already set up. We got there, except for my trombone. Everything else was already sound checked as we pulled in. But it was like 7 bodies crammed into a 2-door Fox, but all of them are like on the side of the road just making fun of me the whole time, like holding up flashlights and other crap while I'm replacing this alternator in the dark. And it's one of those fun moments.
What was the cross street? The guy from Ohio wants to know what the cross street was.
I think every time
the exit numbers all changed on the Mass Pike, so they're all different slightly.
I think every time Rob says trombone, we should take a shot. But
this podcast will be very short. You'll be on the ground in no time.
I feel like, Brad, what you really wanted to know in all this, though, was what kind of music, or what was the song that was playing when we started cruising with the windows down, first cruise trip. It's got to be one of the, you guys all know you did it. I didn't do it. Well, I did it.
Well, let me go ahead and kick this off, because I have a distinct memory of visiting my brother. So my brother had a job with one of the local radio stations here, DC 101. And I went and visited him and a bunch of his radio station friends at the beach one year. And it was like the last day we were hanging out. A bunch of people had already left, and we decided we're going to go get crabs. We're in Ocean City going down the strip, and I've got the car, and we've got like 3 or 4 other people with us. And we crank up as loud as we can, sunglasses at night, in the middle of the fucking day, driving down the main drag in Ocean City. We're in our 20s. The song's like 30 years old at this point. And we're like looking at girls, screaming our lungs out, singing and everything. They're just pointing at us and laughing and disgust, or, I don't know, embarrassment or whatever. And, that was like one of the first real times, that I did that.
I got you there, bro, because picture this, right? Annapolis,
Sicily, 19.
Annapolis, 1990 something, right? And my first car, I had an 87 Audi coupe, right? So Alpine white, open exhaust, sounded like a screaming dragon every time you just rapped on the throttle, right? So we're cruising down into Annapolis for whatever reason. I got guys in the car, and my buddy's like, "Hey, I got an idea." And I had a cassette deck, so he throws this cassette in there and cranks the volume all the way up, right? So here's 4 young kids in a white Audi, which looks like nothing else on the road, playing German rap. So I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to end well for any of us. So yeah, that was a big mistake cruising song right there. Anyway, but I do want to go back to something that Peter.
Wait, does anybody else you want to chime in with their first experience of rocking the windows down with some embarrassing song playing on the radio?
So the first one, I was trying to find the name of the songs. I can't remember. But the second one was definitely all through high school. Was definitely The Offspring. I had a buddy with an old Cutlass 2-door with a sunroof, and at full volume, Come Out and Play was literally the only track we would ever play in that car.
Oh, you didn't have a bad habit?
Going to school, back from school, anything. And at the right moments, everybody, like the dashboard was cracked because of how many times whoever was the passenger seat had to do the double hit every time it happens in that song. And it was literally the way you could identify us from miles away was just blasting the hell out of that song. The more embarrassing one, I'm trying to find the name. It was some early 80s bass song. My first best friend had a 15th anniversary Trans Am, black and white, the anniversary edition one. And he had built, like, he still is a car stereo installer now as a 40-year-old. So it gives you some idea of what he was doing back then. Built one of those car stereos that was competition ready. And so the joke he used to make, because I remember going up to somewhere in New Hampshire, he won first place, not because when he cranked this song loud enough, his car could bounce, but because he could get the cars on either side of his to actually get off the ground. It was, a realm of like 8 18s all fired differently with baffles built so they could go out the bottom. And when the bass was just like shaking the whole place, and anything within, 100 yards, it was just starting to bounce and bounce and bounce. And it was one of those, the volume. I remember the first time we built this system in this car, you literally were not allowed to turn the volume past 2 because the decibels would have, like, the windows would blow out. Like we did it once where the windows like popped out a little bit of their tracks when the windows were closed too much. And so the windows had to be down in order to actually go above like 1.5 out of 10 on the volume. And anything above 2 was only for competition, really. But there was I was trying to look up what it is, some horribly embarrassing old, pseudo hip hop-ish 80s song that we would do on the way to school and back. And it would just, shake the planet type levels of bass.
Now I want to hear Daniels. I know it's Charlie Daniels band, I'm sure, or Alabama.
It's some honky tonk stuff, man.
No, surprisingly. All right, so I don't think it was embarrassing by any means, but one of the first songs that like had that whole nice feel to it, good bass to it and everything. The guy I went to school with had an old Volkswagen Bug, and all he had was one 10-inch sub in it. But because the Volkswagen Bugs were sealed so tight, it had such a good sound to it. And he used to always play Sublime, Love Is What I Got. And that was just a great song. And so that was that. But then for myself, I would say probably, because I used to listen to a decent mix of rap and everything at that time, because that or like the bass track CDs, because that was a big thing back in the day, was bass track CDs. But I remember
bass.
Yeah. So, the Friday soundtrack.
Oh my
I
God.
used to play that a lot, and my favorite song for the bass on that was on Super Hose. And it was just a comical song, and it had really good bass to it.
I could totally close my eyes and see you rocking out to that in like a Volkswagen Bug.
Yeah,
actually, I didn't know that. I didn't have the Bug at that time. That's when
The
I had
square
the
body and some
No,
square body.
I had Toyota Corolla at that time.
That makes more sense.
Blast
With,
Also known as the Silver Bullet.
with 3 different color body panels.
No,
100%.
first year and a half, it was all the same color. Once I wrecked it, it became multiple colors.
Right.
So let me ask this question, since we're kind of going there and we've touched on it a few times. What do you guys think just stock out of the box without manipulating the system, what car had the best audio system or stereo system from the factory, in your opinion?
The cars we owned, or just a car?
Or
like
car
any
you rental turd, somebody else's car. You got in, you went, wow, this is a really good stereo system.
For stock.
I would say
It was nothing German, I'm sure.
Actually, no. BMW had the Harman Kardon upgrades, so they weren't too bad. But I think mine would be, some of the Lexus systems. They were pretty nice.
I was about to say, I think that was the transition when the Japanese cars started really doing it. My mom bought a Mazda back when I was in high school, and it was just out of the box, sounded pretty. I mean, relative today, I'm sure we'd laugh at it, but at the time, it was like, whoa, this was a step up from Ford and everybody else that was kind of doing their thing. They seemed like Japanese cars kind of came at it the first.
I remember mid to late 90s was when they started really improving stereos in general with cars, because prior to that, if you went over halfway, it was all staticky and cracking. You couldn't put no bass to it without blowing a speaker. And I know like GM did in the mid 90s when they released the Impala, they had a Bose stereo system, which was huge at that time, because they partnered with a big stereo company, and it sounded great for the few of them that I was ever around.
Yeah, Bose, I think Bose and Harman Kardon were the two first that actually sort of jumped into that fray. I mean, like my Miata had a Bose system. No highs, no lows. It must be Bose. I mean,
I will say the Volkswagen Mark IVs with the monsoon system. I mean, that was for being just a stock system with a small amp. No, this is pre-Fender.
Oh, yeah, pre-Fender, right? Pre-Fender.
Yeah, this is the monsoon system with a stock, like a little mini amp, power the 4 speakers or whatever. They had the separate tweeters and everything. That was actually a pretty good system for a 20-year-old kid buying his first car. And then my father, used to buy vehicles back in the day you could buy without a stereo. He specifically bought the base model without the stereo so he could put his own stuff in, because he knew the stuff that was coming out of the factory was complete trash. But Rob, to your point, with the Bose and the Harman Kardon, I mean, Alpine and Pioneer were putting stuff in cars too, but they weren't labeling, they weren't putting their name on it, but they had contracts with some of the manufacturers.
The first 5 head units I installed were all Alpine. I mean, they were sort of like the name of high quality, what you wanted to put into when you were replacing stock crap, you put in an Alpine head unit. Like the wiring was clearer, the damping it had when they first started putting CDs and such, like that was the brand that you swapped in first, was Alpine for everything. Like my dad's, the 87 Vanagon, whatever, which had the best stereo we ever put in it because you had all that space under the seats. We put in like 2 bazooka tubes, and we updated the inside to all. So we had two tubes under the back seat. They were smaller, self-contained ones. We had a separate amp running a set of Cambridge speakers, and so like Cambridge studio monitor speakers that were in the back hanging up as well as in the doors and the dash. And so like our Vanagon had phenomenal sound, but it was the Alpine head unit is what always started all that stuff, was doing that.
You got rid of the stock Blaupunk that they had been using for like 30 years. I mean, what's wrong with you?
So the 87 did not have the Blaupunk. It had a different one. Up to 86 they did. The 87, the GL Synchros did not use the Blaupunk. They used a different one. By the way, the bass song from earlier was Daisy Dukes. I just found it. I found it on some site where Rock the Bells, the 20 greatest bass songs.
You got that Daisy Dukes on. You got them Daisy Dukes.
I hit play for a split second, and when you saw my whole face crack up, it's because in my earphones I heard the first 3 notes, and I was like instantly transported back to being 16, 17 years old and hearing that song hit. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
So I got to say, I don't remember about yours, Brad, because it was 2 years older than mine, but I think the stereo in the Grand Cherokee is really good because of the position of the speakers. It does a really good job of doing surround sound because of just the overall shape of it. And I have
that center speaker too.
Correct.
Up in the center of the dash.
Correct. And I think of all the cars I've owned and I've been in, I still think my Jeep has got the best stereo out of everything. So
some trashy cars though.
But then again, I only need so much quality for NPR, right? I'm just saying.
It's true. How much quality, how much bass and treble and good mid range do you need for sweaty balls?
Sweaty balls.
A lot of the more recent good speakers is just a factor of like the NVH being better. right?
Yeah.
Like I had a rental, 6-month-old Jaguar, and just because it was so insulated, the stereo sounded great. And the stereo wasn't necessarily a great stereo. It's just you're so isolated in that box. It's why I'm sure, and I don't remember hearing one recently, but like Volvo is one of those cars where like when you're at the auto show, you close the door in the Volvo and you're no longer at the auto show, right? You're in your little private vault that you can hear a pin drop in. And so I feel like the stock stereo and those things must sound pretty good because you're so isolated that you don't need lots of volume. You don't need big speakers. You don't need crazy equalizers. It's just going to sound clean coming out. And so I think like that's what's happening a lot more in the more recent stuff, right? Like I don't care how much money you put into stereo, your Jeep Wrangler soft top is never going to sound half as good as a cheap ass Volvo just because that isolation piece. Now, granted, you might have a better time in the Jeep with the top down and that stupid soundbar blasting your music out on the way to the beach with the windshield folded down.
Crazy dudes.
But exactly. But in terms of the quality of the sound coming out of it, I mean, it's probably that. I mean, I haven't been in one, but there's a few of those. I think BMW's got a couple. I want to say Bentley does too, where they have the BMW speaker setups and those things.
I think they are putting better quality speakers in too. I mean, the woofers aren't made of paper anymore.
Yeah.
They're actually
Those were
made of
hilarious.
material now.
The number of times you went to pull out a speaker and you were like, this was the speaker in a car that I paid for? Like somebody bought this new,
thousands of dollars for.
Yeah, somebody was new and like this was the cone. Like this is the material they use. The cone of their speaker. Like what are they doing?
For those listening, he was holding up a napkin. For those that were listening, they're like, what was that? It was a napkin, people. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, other than that, Rob.
No, that was a stock speaker from a 1987 Volkswagen GL Jetta.
Well,
they
Rob, as
looked
you
and felt the
mentioned, like
same.
with replacing head units, like I remember the first CD player, because back then it wasn't cheap. You had to save up, especially a high school kid. You had to save up money to buy a lot of the stuff. So I remember buying my first CD player head unit, and I was so excited to get it, put it in the car, and where I live at isn't the smoothest roads. So I'm driving these roads and everything, and all of a sudden the CD starts skipping, and I'm like, what the hell? And it's like, because it was before they'd mastered the art of, having it to where it would read far enough ahead to where you wouldn't have the anti-skip. And I remember that was the most disappointing, exciting purchase I ever made at that time, because I
100%. Yep.
And kids today will never understand that.
I will say, riding around with my dad one day, he did have an 8-track player in his vehicle, and it's a good thing that the 8-track player wasn't secure in the car itself, because we're riding down the road listening to the 8-track, for about half of the song, and then it stops, starts eating the 8-track. He literally just grabs the 8-track, the stereo, everything, and just tosses it out the window. And then we just drive on to the next, I guess it was Circuit City at the time or whatever, and we get a new stereo to replace it. But yeah, he just grabs the whole thing, tosses it right out the window.
So, you bring up a really good point, not to interrupt Pete, but you bring up a really good point. I think we should go back to this.
I wasn't speaking.
But you should.
We're 4 people removed from Pete.
More from Pete.
I was going to say this weird juxtaposition of car audio and stereo stuff, as Brad just brought up, with Circuit City, which became CarMax, right? So mind blown right there, right? But we can readdress that. Let's go back to Pete in the studio.
I want to tell you, first off,
Peter.
It's Peter. I want to tell everybody here, first of all, I appreciate everybody's input regarding, car stereo, but I think you're all wrong. I think you're all wrong on a lot of levels. And I'll tell you what happened. In 1976, Chrysler came out with the integrated CB radio AM FM stereo in the Town and Country wagon. How do I know this? Because I owned one. And I'm telling you right now, that put all of your so-called hi-fi systems, I was using hand quotes, listeners, hi-fi systems, to shame. So I think that was the pinnacle of stereo design. I think we are on the downward slide of audiophilism, if I can call it that ism.
Well, then that brings up one question. What was your CB handle?
I can't, it's not safe.
It was Love Muffin.
Let the record show he froze for a moment there.
You almost told us, people.
I froze because I couldn't get that effing CB radio to work.
Just talking to yourself.
His handle was, "Is this fucking thing on?" That was his handle.
So true story. I'm gonna piggyback off of this, and it wasn't a CB. So in the early days of us going to the track, blasting music, having fun, trailers, we're caravanning to where we're going. We still do this. We take walkie-talkies so we can talk to each other, so we don't have to have an open conference call or anything like that. So I'm riding down with a buddy. We're going to VIR. We got walkie-talkies and we're talking back and forth and we're having fun. We figure we're on a private channel, whatever. So his truck was white, mine was red. So I kept saying, "I'm Little Red Riding Hood," and he was Snow White or something like that. And so we're going back and forth. And then suddenly it's like, hey, Snow White, can you hear me? It's Red Riding Hood, blah, blah, blah. And this guy he comes on and he goes, "It's the big bad wolf." Somebody completely different. And we're like, new channel.
Oh my god.
I like how Brad knew that story was coming. It was doubled over, by the way, halfway through that story.
Yes, I know that story. And by the way, I hate the whole like walkie-talkie thing because they're trying to talk to me the whole time, all the way up to Watkins Glen. And I'm just like, God damn it, I don't want to listen to you. I want to listen to my music. Leave me the fuck alone.
Well, does Eric have separation anxiety?
I think so.
Is that why he needs to have the thing to talk to people all the time?
But he doesn't actually need to talk to people because, like I said, 12 hours to Kentucky, not a word was said the whole time.
Dude, it was all you heard was this V8 screaming across the Continental Divide for most of the trip.
Because of the 4-speed automatic with a 6-liter 400 horsepower V8 and terrible gear.
It was awesome. And after that trip, I got rid of that truck.
It's true.
But here's the thing: during that trip, how much road noise was there to where could you even carry a conversation and heard?
Oh no, it was fine. It was a weird day. It was just like, we're not listening to anything because your options at that point on the road, you couldn't get NPR and you couldn't even get the gospel channels. Like I was like, I'll listen to anything at this point. And it was like, there's just nothing. So we're like, boop, turn it off. And Brad's a quiet guy. And I'm just like, well, I'm not going to talk to myself. So we just drove forever. Versus,
go
ahead.
Little story about lack of music in cars. So while I was in the military, got stationed at Wichita Falls for our training school. We weren't supposed to have vehicles while we were there. One of the guys in my class snuck out, bought a car, and kept it parked off base. So when we'd walk off base, we'd go hop in the car and drive down to town. It was like a 72 or 73 two-door Nova. And it was this early 80s style paint job. It was blue with these weird yellow and different colored stripes down it. But so he bought it. It didn't have a radio. So I don't know who decided it one time, but we're driving down into town and someone starts singing "We All Live in the Yellow Submarine" by the Beatles. So we all just chime in and start singing it. And he, like, Chantel was getting pissed because he hated it. And so after that, every time we got in that car, we just start singing "We All Live in the Yellow Submarine." And it would just drive him nuts.
Dude, that's like singing that Sherry Lewis song, the song that never ends. It's like, holy crap. That's one of those songs that lights me up in the wrong way. I mean, you start singing stuff like that. Ooh.
That's my kids in Old Town Road.
Yeah, right.
Oh my god, that song for me is It's a Small World. Don't ever go to Disney and go on that ride because it's nonstop and you can't get it out of your head afterwards. So for a week at Disney, that's all I heard in my head.
Dude, you want to torture me? Put me in a Citroen DS and then play that song, and I will go berserk. Okay. But no,
Eric's not a violent man, but he'll kill somebody in that situation.
Yeah, that's like a cat locked in a closet right there. But I want to go back to something that Pete alluded to way earlier, talking about driving anthems and stuff like that. And so I wanted to chime in on that for a second. And so for me, I think one of those songs, and this gets to like where like Brad talked about his favorite band and how you get into all that. It's kind of a weird thing because I got this connection to the cruising idea of like that car anthem by the opening of Revenge of the Nerds 2, which, if you're familiar with that movie, is Back to Paradise by 38 Special. And for me, that's one of those just car anthem songs. Like you're going, it's just happy. It gets you in the mood to go driving and stuff like that. But my dad was a big audio guy, right? He wasn't musically inclined, but he was a big he appreciated music, and he had a ton of music. I found out, especially after he passed away, there was like, a treasure trove of reel to reel and all sorts of stuff that I went through. And so, he was big into disco and all that kind of stuff, which is, one of my guilty pleasures. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I found, as a kid, the song that got me hooked on my favorite group was in the 80s when they played The Look by Roxette for the first time on the radio. And I heard it in the car while he was driving me to school. And I was like, this is it. Cause that's a big, electric guitar heavy song. And so that's always got me. I've always appreciated their music, and it's absolutely fantastic. But I found, though, you guys were talking about drive-in, and it seemed like a lot of daytime driving. And for whatever reason, I found myself as a young driver driving at night a lot. And so for me, the connection was the songs at night. They're a lot more chill, maybe a little bit more down tempo, which got me into, house music and some other stuff. So I was wondering for you guys, like, what's your nighttime soundtrack like when you're out driving, let's say on a long trip?
So my first ever nighttime album was, I think I was just learning how to drive, and I learned how to drive on a drive from Massachusetts up to the Finger Lakes. And the doing the night shift, the only, I think it must have been a tape that we had was Paul McCartney's "Give My Regards to Broad Street," and phenomenal album. But that album became the soundtrack to my night driving, because as I was driving, my dad would just flip it over because he didn't want to distract me at all, because it was like multiple hours of like learning how to drive with this, all the manual in a Volkswagen bus and everything. But that became the night music. Was that album for me was that big thing.
For me, I've got a couple albums. One is David Bowie's "Station to Station," because my father, when he was making his playlist, he would pick a lot of songs from that. One favorite is "Stay." It's a fantastic song. And then also, what was that? I just thought of it. It just popped out of my head. Pink Floyd, "Wish You Were Here." "Shine On You Crazy Diamond," all the parts of that. And it helps me. It's nice and chill, and a lot of guitar and everything. Just nice to cruise to and everything. That and The Wall. The Wall it's got a very dynamic. It's a lot of mood changes in that, but just cruising to those at night, and just regular song that just gets me going is "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen. If I need to get pumped up, I just put that on and just scream at the top of my lungs. My wife is like giggling at me and laughing at me when I start singing that song. I mean, even in the kitchen, if I'm sitting here getting ready to cook, I put that song on and I get all riled up.
That's the two different types of night song too, right? There's the type of like you're fully wide awake and you're driving and want that background music, versus the like I'm sort of half dozing, but I know I need to get there and I have an hour left, and what am I going to crank to, as you said, to sing along to and be in the moment so you finish that drive.
Yeah.
That second one for me was always "Synchronicity," that album by The Police.
Oh yeah.
It was phenomenal for that purpose for me. That was my big one.
What about you, Donovan?
Nowadays my soundtrack is, God, how many bugs am I hitting with this car that I'm gonna have to clean tomorrow? But really, like when I'm on a road trip, I think that's when I start to go through kind of the deeper albums on my my iPod. You go back to like you said, The Police, or you listen to Rush, or I've got to say the classic driving album for me though is still Journey's Greatest Hits, right? You put that on, something like that, where you're just kind of going back through some of the old stuff. I mean, right after pit stop, when you got Red Bull and stuff in, it's whatever the new stuff is and you're cranking it up. But when you're really kind of in that zone, to me, it's stuff that I've heard a million times. It's comfortable, I know it, just kind of go through it. Yeah, and it's a lot of that stuff. It's a lot of the classic rock, but it's always the full album at that point. It's not, I'm not jumping songs. I'm listening from end to end. And, then there's a lot of good, like 10 Sumner's Tales, for example, something that's really good from beginning to end, I think is really, like you were saying, Brad, it kind of takes you on a journey and stuff, and you can, peak the valleys, and you can listen to the full experience.
And I'm with you. When I was younger, I listened to a lot of Genesis, right? Especially at night. So that seemed to kind of keep me going. And their albums were one of those where it's like, you're 2 minutes in and suddenly you're 20 minutes in and you didn't realize, because it's like, they're just designed in such a way that you just plow through it, and they're seamless in a way. And so I appreciated Phil Collins and the whole group there, but that, I think my tastes have changed since then. Now I find myself, 80s synthwave. I'm listening to stuff like the Acrylics and Isle and a lot of, you know, the Daft Punk album, like the Tron soundtrack is a fantastic night cruising song by Daft Punk. Martin Solveig, a lot of this newer stuff that has like this retro feel. Those are a lot of fun. And I find those to be relaxing too, because I don't want to be overly amped at night either, right? But I want to turn it back to Pete.
So, but before you do, I'm curious, as we're all talking similarly, and this could be an age thing, which I'm curious, but most of us have this memory and experience and thought pattern of albums, right? Of like listening to the full album. And a lot of it's because you grew up with tapes or CDs where you weren't, you know, it's not the Spotify generation where here's my playlist or here's Pandora or here's my iPod on shuffle, right? It's I want to listen to a whole album. I think Donovan mentioned it, where like it's almost a comfort factor, right? I know what the next song is. Your brain leads you to the next song, and you sort of have that anticipation of like, as this goes, I'm going to flow into this, I'm going to flow into that, I'm going to flow into that. And I wonder if we were having this conversation with a bunch of our 22-year-old members or whatever, and at the younger generation, if they're like, if that would be a detached thought to them, and it was much more of like, no, I put on, you know, as you said, my trance station, I put on my 80s rock station, I just see what comes on, and just that juxtaposition between those two aspects I'm curious about.
Exactly. And to your point, I think albums were also curated, right? And now it's just this randomization of like, okay, 1 minute we're listening to K-pop, next minute it's Iron Maiden, and the next minute it's, you know, classic bebop from the 50s, and you're all over the map. And I think you're right, it's generational, because if you look at how people use technology nowadays, it's the same. We're jumping from app to app, we're moving around, like nobody ever slows down to just kind of sit and appreciate it. And I think that's also what's lost in driving now too, is that appreciation for the long road that's going God knows where. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? And what you make of it. And so that's always resonated with me, and I think with Brad as well, and that's what we're really talking about here.
Yeah, and that's something that an album does, like a long road, and it's a journey and everything, and you got to enjoy that. A well put together album is a complete thought or a complete concept, even if it's not a concept album. Like the musicians were in a certain headspace when they put that together, and it's when it's produced well and it's put together well and the tracks are in the right order and everything, it tells a story, whether they meant to or not. It tells a complete story or thought, which helps you get through, you know, whatever journey you're on in a car, for me.
And there's so many go ahead.
Sorry, do you think that has anything to do with, you know, so many kids now don't really care to drive so much, where, you know, you wonder how much that is the experience in the car? You know, for us, you know, you got in the car, you turned the music on, and again, you were in a headspace, right? It wasn't, I'm just going, you know, wherever. And now maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's so sporadic that you're not getting the emotional attachment, because you know how it is. I mean, especially on old albums like that, you know, where you're coming to song 2 and maybe it makes you think about that girl you dated in high school, or maybe it makes you think about the summer trip or something. And, you know, if you're not having that experience and you're not in a car, there's no association there. So maybe there's an emotional detachment these days with the car. I don't know.
So I think the big thing with that is the fact that technology has changed that a lot, to where when we were younger, if we got into the car to go on a long trip, we might have been lucky to have like a Sega Game Gear or a Game Boy or something, but the batteries always died within like a half hour of trip. So then you're stuck listening to the radio. And like nowadays, like the technology for the batteries and stuff so much longer, kids can sit there and watch movies on their phones or tablets or stuff like that, to where it's not so much music. They have the entertainment possibilities they have far exceeds anything we ever had growing up. And I think that is a huge disconnect right there in itself.
Pete,
yeah, I wanted to jump in. I think, you know, for me, I've been listening to all this, and I was so excited when I got my driver's license, right? Because I needed to escape the house, right? I needed to escape whatever was going on, right? To have that car provided mobility to go and do all these different things. And it touches upon, you know, the newer generation. They don't want to drive, and maybe because technology is already providing them that certain level of escapism, right? Where they don't need to have this very visceral, alive experience of driving. You know, and it's a little bit interesting to hear about everybody's music choices. And I'm not saying I'm the oldest guy here, although I may be the oldest guy here, you know, it's interesting to listen to these music choices, because when I was growing up, you know, AM radio was being surpassed by FM radio, right? So this is the songs they were playing, some of these songs on AM radio, but then FM radio kind of took off. And, you know, I've seen this huge movement of music through different mediums. But to go back to, I guess I'm not sure where this is heading, but I think for me in driving, it has provided, whether competitively or not, or just getting out, has provided me this escapism, and the music is that soundtrack to that escapism, right?
Yeah.
And it is that soundtrack that puts me somewhere else. And we also touched upon this earlier. There's two phases, right? There's the amped up phase, or it's in the filling in the void in the background. I love albums like 2112 by Rush, or any Yes album in the background. Even the Doors are a great evening music, right? When I'm driving out and listening, like the Doors greatest hits, or, you know, LA Woman, or you know, Riders on the Storm in the End, you know, those are great things to listen to. But I really just wanted to make a comment about escapism, right? And what car is provided, and the soundtrack that music provides to that.
And I think you're right, and I think Dan touched on something too, talking about like what the driving experience was for us as a child in the car. Because I'm thinking back now as I'm listening to you guys talk about escapism, in that I can't count the number of times that I caught myself kind of staring out the window from the back seat of a Scirocco and, you know, daydreaming about something, right? And I often wonder, like my kids, like they're, you know, they got screens everywhere and school is all different and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, is there a moment where they just kind of stare out the window and daydream about something, or imagine something, or you fantasize about it, but the music brings you there? Because just staring out a window watching grass grow is, you know, super boring, let's face it. But the music, it makes your mind start to wander and think about things and come up with ideas. And so I feel it incentivizes us to think in different ways, right? And it's important on multiple levels.
And part of that thought is also the music. Whether you're doing it consciously or subconsciously, you're interpreting that music into some sort of thought in your mind.
Yeah.
That helps you either escape or fantasize, or, you know, just wander and drift and daydream. And the music points you into a direction wherever your mind wants to take it. You determine that.
Well, and Pete mentioned the fact that getting your license, how it like changed things for you, and a big thing, in my opinion, is it gave freedom. You know, having your license was freedom. You could go places that you couldn't before. You didn't have to rely on others. It gave you that independence. And so, I don't know if kids get that feeling today, because they're so connected through technology that there's not that rush. Like, hey, I gotta get into the mall to cruise up and down the strip on Friday night to see everybody. I don't think that's a thing anymore, and it's disappointing.
We'll go behind a Dairy Queen and talk about our Volkswagens. What you talking about?
And speaking about that freedom, for me, it wasn't just freedom to get out of the house. It was freedom to get in the car and turn up on full blast the Metallica's Black album for the first time, without my dad in the passenger seat telling me, turn that shit off.
100% on that one. 100%. You had the freedom to listen to whatever you wanted to in your own private space.
Really loud too. That's true. Yeah, you know, and it makes me think about, you know, and I don't think it's just kids, right? You know, my wife, I kid her about that too, about being buried in her phone or something, you know, in the car. Or, you know, the first time I'd taken her, we'd gone to Europe. It's the first time she'd been over there. You know, we're traveling through, we're driving to Paris, and, you know, just amazing French countryside. She was reading the book, but I'm like, you know what, this is probably the time to just let your mind go, you know what I mean? And really just have those thoughts. And it makes me think about when I was a kid. I think the first time that I realized that, my parents put me on a bus, and I was heading up to West Virginia to visit some family, and Rush's Presto had just come out. And, you know, on a bus, you know, it was a 7-hour trip, but on a bus, it was 16 hours or something. So, you know, I had my cassette and I'm just listening to that thing over and over and over. But I remember looking out the window and, you know, taking roads that were not interstate, and your mind just kind of goes, you know, it kind of wanders. But to me, you know, it is an escape, and I think it's therapy. You know, there was about a year ago or so, maybe it was about 2 years ago, I was really wound up. I mean, to the point where I don't think I was going to have a breakdown or anything like this. That wasn't that kind of thing, but I was just super stressed and just really just kind of, tightly wound. And I told my wife, hey, listen, I'm getting in the car. I had the E28 M5, had just gotten it. And I said, I'm getting in the car. I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know when I'm coming back. I mean, I wasn't going to be gone for days, but I was going to go out for a couple hours. And I took off. And the first thing I did is plugged in my phone, put on some good music, and took off. And coincidentally found one of the mountain roads that we drive today just by just going, and that kind of sense of direction of, I'm going to go this way, I'm going to go that way. And I think the combination of the mountain roads and that music and just the escapism, and that therapy was really good for me, and it really did kind of reset my, my batteries a little bit. And so I think there's that, but again, maybe it's because we grew up that way. It was always the association of the car is freedom, and the car is, it's just us. We go anywhere. Really, you're connected really anywhere, short of the oceans and things, you can go anywhere you want.
Yeah, and you mentioned that therapy, and you can't really see it because it's cut off, but in the picture behind me, the guitar pick has a quote that says, "Music is what feelings sound like." And for me, like being, I mean, I'm a quiet guy, as Eric alluded to earlier. You may not be able to tell from the podcast, but I'm a pretty quiet, reserved, shy guy, and it's hard to express my feelings sometimes. So, like, using music to just help me, I guess, get my feelings out. Yeah, I'm starting to tear up now. It's whatever. I see you laughing, Eric. But yeah, it's just a way to feel. I mean, it's a way to express, myself and how I'm feeling at that moment.
Brad's a hugger.
I give great bear hugs being, 6'4", 300 pounds.
Dan, what were we going to say, man?
So Donovan, you were saying how on your bus trip you had your cassette, your Walkman or whatever. I remember back at that age that I'd have a cassette in and be listening to it for hours, and all of a sudden the batteries would start to die. And like if there were songs that had fast lyrics, that was the easiest way for me to learn it, because as it got slower, I could learn the lyrics that way if they were to a really fast-paced song. So you'd be listening to it and it would be like just so slow and everything. But that was one of those things. And then when it died, you'd hit the stop button and wait like an hour or so and push play to listen to another 5 minutes of music really slow. That was the way we got by. But you were mentioning how you hopped in your car and just went out. And I'm a big fan of that, where all the different places I've been in the world, I like to just get in the car and just go get lost. And that's the thing, GPS today has ruined that, to where people don't go out and get lost and just find those back roads. Like you said, like you found one that you ride now. And that's the thing, like just go out and drive and experience all the scenery and everything. And I don't think kids today grasp that concept.
And to that point, my freshman semester, first semester of college ever, I used to do that because I was an idiot when I made my schedule, and I had a class at 8 a.m. and a class at like 2 p.m. on a Monday. And I was like, well, what the hell am I going to do? I'm not going to do my freaking homework. Why would I do that? So I would get in the car and just drive around the campus and the surrounding areas and all the roads. And I actually probably touched every single road in Montgomery County, by doing that, just spending all this time driving around.
So that slow cassette story that Dan told explains why he speaks the way he does. I get it now. It makes 100% sense.
It also explains why he talks fast sometimes and then he starts to slow down.
That's my blood sugar. The batteries are wearing low.
We need to charge him. Fill him with diesel.
So I think we've nailed this one, but I got a question to throw out there. There's certain cars when you look at them and you go, that's the perfect music video car. What is that?
For what kind of music?
It doesn't matter. You just look at it, you go, that would be perfect in a music video.
Whatever it is, it has to have a long hood so the blonde can crawl across to it with the fan blowing on her and her whipping her hair back in it.
So Tonic Katane can roll around on the hood.
I heard it was Go ahead.
I was going to say, the hard part about answering that is this is another topic. I don't know if it was in the agenda or not, whatever, is how different musicians have used cars in their music videos and stuff historically, right? Like I remember, when I was first back in the days of downloading Top Gear episodes, through whatever that website was that we all had to grab the torrents from. And I remember like when they had JK on, and JK is huge into cars, and he would be like, oh, I chose this car for this Jamiroquai video because it's the one I had just bought. And it's like every Jamiroquai video is strongly based in automotive stuff. And right. And so there's certain cars I see that fit that vein, right? So I'll see a car and I'll be like, that belongs in a Motley Crue video. That belongs in a Jamiroquai video. That belongs in this video. And like I mentioned, Lee Sklar. Lee Sklar has like a 900 horsepower hot rod, you know, sort of thing. And I see what I see his car and my brain thinks of the stuff that he's been in. And so like, it's hard to detach that from like, you know, seeing some 80s car and being like, oh, there's an 80s band that screams 80s that belong there, because every car that I see is attached to some bit of history or story in my head of when I've seen that, you know, beyond just, oh, it's Grateful Dead, it's a Volkswagen bus or whatever it might be. But all those different artists, the major ones that have like, especially have been guests on Top Gear, especially because you see them and you get to hear their whole car history as you watch that show, and you get to see exactly what they've had along the way. And I begin to associate that with that, making it harder to sort of separate that knowledge, if you will, from answering that.
Third gen F body is the correct answer for any music video. Third gen F body.
I was going to say Fiero.
I knew it. I knew you were going to say that.
Pontiac.
Surprised you didn't say HA car.
I was doing a walk so because we can't drive anywhere really, I started walking around listening to music, like just walking around the city doing 7-8 mile walks. And sorrowfully it was dark. I wish I could have got a better picture of it. There was a mint Fiero parked on the side of the road on East Capitol Street, like literally mint. I don't know if I could see if I could.
There's no like, such thing as a mint Fiero. They all came from the factory with
like, this is like with the flash on the back of mine, but it was just, I literally stopped in my tracks and I walked by and I turned the music off. I had to stop the music so I could focus on what I was seeing. And some person walking the dog walked by me and they're like, are you okay? And I was like, do you know what this is? And they're like, you have a good night, sir. They sort of walked away from me. But I was floored at the fact that I was seeing this like beautiful Fiero there. It's kind of awesome.
Best handling car, 1984. Donovan.
I'm really kind of ruined by all the rap videos, man. I automatically went to like the Bentleys and the Lambos and, all that stuff. So I don't know. I mean, other than that, I think like the class, the hot rods and stuff back in the 80s days with the ZZ Top kind of thing is kind of where I go with that. The big hair and the.
I think there's one car that maybe we can all.
Literally couldn't imagine a more beautiful vessel for Alexa to be.
The hell was that? Thanks, Pete.
Sorry.
Ruined. Able to keep a straight face.
Ruined.
He's like, I might not be the oldest guy here. Meanwhile, laxative commercials are coming on his phone.
I was looking up a video,
baby.
I was looking up a video for Fiero, and then the laxative commercial came up. I don't know.
All right, so switching gears.
Wait. There is one car though. I think we can all agree on. There's one that you look at it and you could say, yes, that belongs in a music video. Every music video. And it's not the F-Body by GM.
And it's not the little red Corvette.
No. All right, you ready? Lamborghini Countach.
I would have said Diablo.
I thought
no, got to go Countach.
Countach is the ultimate music video car. It just screams. It doesn't matter what kind of music you put with it. It could be in any music video. It could be in a classical music video if you want it to be. And you know what re-cemented it for me was when I watched, and if you guys haven't seen it, go look it up. All right. Hasselhoff, True Survivor, which is the soundtrack to Kung Fury. Dude, he's got a Countach and it's legit. I mean, it is awesome. And so that's the pinnacle. I mean, I don't know.
The other one is my brain is blanking on the name of it. Why can't I remember this?
F-body.
The older suicide
F-body.
door convertible.
Lincoln? The
Continental? The Continental with the 4 doors, with the doors open. It was used in the intro for what's the TV show? Entourage. Thank you. Yeah. That car could also be in literally any music video. True. Alongside.
Or JFK documentary, but we'll cut that out. So keep going.
Switching gears here, I've got an interesting, what I think is an interesting question. What's the best car decade and the best music decade, and do they overlap?
I got to lean towards the 70s on that.
For both, or for one, or for which one?
If it has to be one decade that covers both sufficiently, I'd say the 70s. Because you still, at least early 70s, you still had your muscle cars. You had some good rock and everything. And so I'd say they had good cars and good music during that time.
They had disco. All right.
That's not a bad answer. I feel like the 80s are slightly better, but again, I think that's tainted by my age, right? So in the 80s is where you first started getting the Testarossas, the Countashes, the 959s, like that stuff started going crazy.
And the hair bands.
And the hair bands. You could get metal hair bands. You could get more of the pop stuff. You could
the
get
Euro trash, the techno.
Hip hop was actually starting. All like the major Snoops and everything. All that stuff was coming into play. So you got a pretty good range of stuff, but that could easily be tainted by my age, right? If I asked my parents, they'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? There's these, amazing things in the 60s where a lot of these cars were, just phenomenal. The music was out of this world. And so there's like, I think with different ages, you could say different things, right? Somebody nowadays could be like, well, there's this amazing new bands now that play almost everything. And you can get, Veyrons and everything else. I mean, like there's different, or, McLaren long tails. There's all these different options there.
I think to your point about pre-70s though, Rob, is most people would probably gravitate to a 55 to 57 Chevy if they had to pick a car for that period of music. So that I don't think there would be like, oh yeah, that I don't know, 63 blah blah blah. And then like Ford Galaxy, like nobody's gonna pick that, you know what I mean? Versus to your point about the 80s, there's just there's aces of cars that you can pick from.
80s are overglorified though. I mean, I think this is where Rob's wrong. I think, if you look at the shitty electronics that were out in cars, and how they were trying to do, tune port injection and the really early versions of fuel injection and some of the harebrained ideas that came out of Chrysler back then. I mean, there was some really horrible electronics. And I think, I'm going to side with Mountain Man Dan on this and say that the 70s was probably, the purest part of Detroit, at least that came out. And even to a certain degree, some of the purest Japanese imports, the JDMs that came in, right? The MX-3 from Mazda, the Corolla GT. I mean, those are some amazing cars during that time frame. I'm not saying Rob's wrong. I just think that we tend to, all of us are probably going to come into this conversation a little bit with some, rose-colored tint glasses about what we think is the preferred era, but Rob's wrong, but that's fine. I know.
So I guess Donovan's the tiebreaker. We got 2 for the 80s and 2 for the 70s.
Oh, I think Donovan's going to say the 90s, but I want to hear.
He's all grunge. He's like, Green Day and Sublime, like all this other stuff in a Toyota Corolla that looks like a suppository.
Guys,
That would have been a first sell.
back and forth of, I was going to say 80s to start with, right? When you think about, I mean, what's interesting music-wise about the 80s is think where it started, right? It was still there was a little bit of disco still around, but you had, all of like the early, I don't know, it wasn't techno then, but electronic music was still getting power. And then all the way to the end when, like grunge and all that stuff was happening and the hairband stuff. And the cars were amazing. You think about like that, of course, the GTI, right? The Mark I and all the Porsches and everything else came out. But I agree with you on the electronics and, a lot of the American stuff was garbage. But when you think about the 70s too, great music, although I think 80s probably had better music, completely. But when you think about the cars, I think that's true for the most part, except the American cars. Like the early 70s American cars, okay. But, when you got into the whole oil crisis and all that, it was just garbage for a while. But you think about all the stuff that was coming out of Italy in particular in the early 70s, just gorgeous, just masterpieces. And you think about, like the early 911s, the RS and some of those other ones. I think that's, I don't know what the answer is. I'm going to.
No, I could easily.
It's your opinion. It's an opinion.
I could be swayed, right? So I think like he's not wrong, right? It comes down to different things. Like the 73 911 RS would be, I'd be
agreed. But if you had to put soundtracks with cars, let's think about it from that perspective. Okay.
Oh, it's all 80s. 80s destroys everything. I'm sorry.
100%, except when you talk about the Aries K car, because I want to know what the soundtrack is for that, right? But
it's a sound of flatulence.
So we'll go to Pete on that one. But so what I'm thinking here, though, is Donovan has hit on something. And I've always thought this, it's kind of a theory I have, that cars kind of evolved at the same time music did. And he hit on something really important, especially from the 70s through the mid 90s, right? the music, we talk about 80s music, and I'm going to harp on that just for a second. There's a weird period there. And Pete's right. A lot of strong, great rock and roll in the early to mid 70s. And then you had the disco era come in the late 70s that carried into the early 80s. And you get the beginning of the synth era, right? But the synth era only lasted from 78 to 84. And so if you look at the Cars from 78 to 84, you're like, right? But then you get this transition in 85, much to Donovan's point, the GTIs and the 944s and all the Alfa Romeos and a lot of the American cars, the new C4 Corvette in 85, right? You had this transition even in the automotive world, and the sound. If you listen to songs from 84 and then go to the Billboard top of 85, they sound completely different. Like the technology in music changed at the same time that the technology in cars did. And that lasted into the early, almost mid 90s. Then we started to get the cab forward cars and the bubble designs, and the music changed again, right? We left the techno Eurotrash era that we got, along with the import cars. And then we started to get these, oval shaped Mobius, marshmallows on the road, and the music went along with it, right? You had the growth of grunge and all that other kind of stuff. So I think there's an interesting dichotomy there between the music and the cars over that, let's call it 25-year span, where I think they were really interlocked. So what do you guys think about that?
Real quick, I can agree with you a lot on that, but I also want to throw in the fact that for the best one, it can also depend on mood. Just like music, your mood determines which music you're in the mood to listen to. So like for cars as well, I love some of the old 30s and 40s and even early 50s cars compared to modern stuff, because the flowing lines they had on them were so much. And I actually liked listening to some of the old music from back then. Surprisingly, it's call me crazy, but I like some of it. But it's I agree that society, music, and cars all transition kind of together. So I can agree with you on how.
So it also begs the question, did the music influence the designers and the engineers at the time? Is there just enough overlap there where it may have, we're talking about daydreaming and escapism. Maybe those German designers, Italians, Americans were like, man, this music's really motivating me to come up with something new, and so they evolved together.
There's definitely a truth aspect to that, right? I mean, if you think about a car designer, right, they're in the arts, if you will, just like music, right? So they're coming to the same headspace, if you will, right? And so as those things, as that gets refined, it keeps pace with itself, right, with each other. So I think there's definitely some truism to that. By the way, I just looked up top music from the 80s, and I am floored by how good it was. So I'm even more right than I was before. I just want to throw that out there.
I want to say that it's if you're from the Miami Vice generation too, and watching the show and how they basically soundtracked the show and cars and music, you know what I mean? The music in the car in Miami Vice. Eric, for those of you that are tuning in, Eric is in the background laughing. So please disregard the host as we make more rational sense of this music connection to cars. By the way, Miami Vice, best show ever next to the kit,
except for all the fake Ferraris. But I immediately, when you said Miami Vice, you know what came to my mind? Jan Hammer, right? I mean, immediately went there, conjured that up, that theme song, and that's something else. Whatever, but move on.
No, I was just going to say, I think I could definitely see where music and the designers are influenced by each other. I think Miami Vice comes to mind as a great example of that. Whether I'm right or wrong, I don't know, but
I only have one rebuttal to that. Magnum PI. Donovan,
the Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, geez.
Although I gotta say, you look back to some of the 50s and 60s cars and the music that was around, and when you're in your V8 hot rod and the coolest music you have is some kind of bebopping something that doesn't align. You know what I mean? You listen to it now, and I mean, skip the Little GTO and all those kind of songs, but I mean, I can't even think of some.
Well, you had the Beach Boys, you had Elvis. I mean, you had a lot of stuff that could have been good for cruising, but there was a lot of stuff that was reserved for the ballroom. I agree with you there.
But you think about, you made a point about the music and the cars. You think about, again, back to the GTI in the 80s. I'd consider it quirky, right? And some of the music was poppy and kind of quirky in that time. And, that did seem to kind of fit where, you could probably pull up in a valet in a Mark 1 GTI and get parked up front because it was cool. It was like the new little, well, over here, the new hatchback that was cool and quirky and everybody was doing it. Not to say that your DeLorean wouldn't get you up front too, but
You heard it here first here. The Mark 1 GTI is a cool car and it'll get you parked up front in Monaco.
I mean,
That's
the
it.
DeLorean,
Let's be clear.
DeLorean is
Both of these are really cool cars right now. Every one of us would be happy to drive either of those.
I wouldn't fit in one, so there's that.
Oh, okay.
Ford EXP is the answer.
Ooh, good call. I'm okay with that.
The DeLorean has an immediate soundtrack. We all go to Huey Lewis in the News. So I think you also hit on something there, Rob. A lot of cars have soundtracks with them. The Dukes of Hazzard with what can I remember? Waylon Jennings, right? Or Knight Rider or Magnum or whatever. I mean, it's like they're so intertwined,
So I will say that because the 80s had a lot of the really funky electronic sound stuff they were experimenting with in music, it does kind of go with the crappy electronics in the cars. Because some of the sounds they came out with were just crappy sounds.
You're not wrong, but I'm floored. Like, I honestly forgot, like, the late 80s. It was everything from, NWA's albums and the Joshua Tree and Master of Puppets. I didn't realize was then too, from Metallica.
Yeah, everything from Metallica pre-Black Album was 80s. And you still have like Paul Simon's Graceland, and you have Thriller from Michael Jackson, and you still have, Back in Black from AC/DC. Like, you just have a huge pile of amazing music all through that part that I didn't even think of as being like 80s music, right? If you go from, and then you have the Fox Body Mustang.
Yeah.
God.
And a VW Fox.
And the VW Fox.
But I want to go back to something Donovan said. If I was driving a retro car right now, and I want to talk post-war, because like trying to find a soundtrack for like a Packard or for a Duesenberg, that's just, okay, let's do a Viennese wall.
Which war?
World War II, post-World War II.
Revolutionary.
Rob's rolling his face.
War of 1812.
You're not that old, dude.
But no, so I was thinking the 50s and 60s and even early 70s, like I can see taking some modern music and having a lot of fun in an older car, listening to albums by Fitz and the Tantrums, Carol Emerald, Capital Cities, Chromeo, Friendly Fires, Empire of the Sun, because they have this like old school, like disco mixed with jazz, mixed with the 50s kind of sound. And so it's like putting a new stereo in an old car, right? So I could see like having a lot of fun and making that journey a lot more exciting than just listening to, Ice Cream Parlor, Soda, bebop type of stuff.
So are we supposed to respond with our favorite boy band now? Or...
I was unclear as to the next step there too. I'm like, should we pick a brand new car and some really old music and see if that works too?
I don't know. I backed it. I backed it in a corner spot. Yeah.
Here's an idea that sucks. Go. Everyone kind of was like,
I backed that one into a corner spot. I'm sorry, my bad. Brad, what else you got? What else you want to talk about?
I was going to say, if you could only pick one vehicle to drive and one song, not album, song to listen to for the rest of your life while driving said vehicle, what would they be?
Well, I tell you what, it wouldn't be Yellow Submarine and the Citroen DS, but
that's because it would be It's a Small World and a Citroen DS.
Pretty much. Do I have to pick one song? Can it be an album? Would it be easier if it's an album?
Well, I'll make it easier. You can pick one album and one car. And I use car for vehicle, one four-wheel vehicle.
Okay. I got something.
Is reliability a factor of the car?
No, because you can listen to the music while you're working on it.
Is it a car that you've owned or driven, or just anything?
It can be whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a car you've owned or driven, but if you want to choose something that you've owned or driven, that's on you.
This is the what should I buy portion of it.
This is the desert island question.
Yeah.
This is like this game my daughter plays, Would You Rather?
So Donovan's going to be in a Formula One car listening to Crazy Frog, Axel F on repeat for forever, because the song sounds exactly like the car. BMW Formula One car.
God, that's tough. I don't know. It'd have to be something. I mean, it'd have to be something fun. But you automatically go to, well, I'd get tired of both really, really quickly. But I don't know, something that I know it may be cliche now to say, but it's something, a car that you can feel, something that an older car, something that feels good to drive, and you can feel all the bumps in the road. But man, I don't know. I'd have to go with something like God, I don't even know.
The problem here is like they don't go together, right? Trying to pick a car that goes together with the album is the hard part.
Well,
Got
right?
it.
'Cause-
like we were talking about the journey of up and the emotional journey of it attached to the car. You got to kind of figure, and I don't think you really know what that is until you're together.
Already know. I got it.
all right, go.
Send it.
Dodge Omni GLHS Shelby with the Police Demolition Man.
I think I'm gonna go with the Doors, but the Police Demolition Man's a solid call.
The Police Demolition Man with a Dodge GLHS Shelby.
Okay. On that note, how about a 427 Cobra with Girls, Girls, Girls?
There you go.
I mean, it's loud and right in your face, both of them.
I don't even think you could hear the music over the exhaust note of that car.
And maybe that's the point. That's why it's girls, girls, girls. The song is irrelevant.
The song is sexist. Sexy? No, sexist. No,
Yes.
sexy.
It's both. Sexily sexist. Mountain Man's gonna drive a square body with
Actually,
bluegrass,
no, it's going to be thrash grass.
thrash grass.
You go with thrash grass.
Reverend Horton Heat and
Jerry Lee Lewis.
No, okay, so vehicle wise, and only because it has a lot of sentimental to me, I'd say my Pontiac Grand Prix G body, because the amount of time I spent driving that car across this country, just listening to music, and it's a very comfortable riding car. So that would be the car that I would choose. As for music, that's where I'm hung up, because there's so many good songs and albums out there that I like. So
Feliz Navidad.
Tito Puente's Greatest Hits, Volume 3.
it's going to be all K-pop.
Oh God, BTS.
All right, Rob, do you have one? Because I got one.
So again, there's a detachment in my head, right? So like we've talked about this previously. I forget if it was on a podcast or not, right? But if I had to choose, because of the way I grew up and was raised, right, my pinnacle car is still a 911. And so in my mind, the pinnacle of that is like a Singer 911, right? And so I want one of those, and most of those don't even have stereos, and so I wouldn't necessarily want music in it. But in terms of the album side, brief side story, half the reason I originally bought my Miata that got me into tracking and everything when I bought it 20 years ago now, whatever it was, is the guy had owned it for like 6 months, but on the test drive, he had left in a live album from U2. And that's like, top down test driving that car for the first time with U2, coming over the speakers just was something. And when I ended up buying it, he ended up, like, I mentioned the music to him when I bought it, and he like burned me a copy of it. And so looking through a list of albums, I've seen a lot of bands live, and recently I got to see the Joshua Tree tour of U2, and the Joshua Tree is just a different planet of album. Like, would I possibly get tired of it? Maybe, but it's so obscenely good. And so the answer I want to give is the Joshua Tree from U2 and a Singer 911, but I don't, in no way, shape, or form do those two things go together nicely at all. But that would sort of be where my head's at with picking those two objects.
That's fine.
So, Rob, you say the car doesn't come with a radio, and that just made me think of the fact that running up and down the road, how often I see younger individuals today in cars that have stereos, but instead they got earbuds in. And I can't help but to wonder, why do you have earbuds in listening to something when you could easily connect it to your audio in your car? So you could always just put some earbuds in, I guess.
That's true. But yeah, I think if I had to pick one album, that's the album. And if I had to pick one car, that's the car. And that's probably where I'd be.
So because I don't care about Brad's rules, to use his phrasing usually. So I don't care about your stupid rules or your question. And this is usually the 3-car garage question. I have 3 cars and 3 albums to go with them because I couldn't make a decision on this one. So my first car and its pairing album would be a 1985 Mercedes SL500. And the album to go with that would be On the Ropes by Mint Royale. It's a nice kind of techno-y Eurotrash upbeat thing to go with that. My second choice car would be pretty much a Ferrari 308 and Depeche Mode's Greatest Hits. And my third car would be, I don't care the year, would be a Porsche 356 convertible and the OK Go album entitled Of the Blue Color of the Sky. So those would be my choices. And if you notice, there's a pattern. All of these are considered open air motoring vehicles because I think there's something to be said about cruising, music, and convertibles all go together. So those would be my choices.
So to chime in, because live music is always a really good thing. And I think in my car, I would probably lean towards one of the MTV Unplugged albums of either like Alice in Chains or Nirvana or something like that, because their Unplugged albums were more mellow sounding, but they still had the intensity of when they would play under normal, plugged in equipment. So I'd probably go with that on that. But if you're talking open air, I'm gonna have to go be my typical obnoxious self on one of my Harleys with the radio turned up, playing some heavy metal.
So one, the rule is 4 wheels, not 2. But I will say the 2 bands you named, both are do an amazing job of putting together albums as opposed to collections of songs, right? So like you say Alice in Chains or Nirvana, my brain immediately can listen to in my head every single song in order from almost every one of their albums because they just do such a good. Same with the band Live, like Throwing Copper or something. Live is one of those people say like, what's a perfectly constructed album? And those are bands that have put together albums where there's never a dud. You don't be like, oh, I got to skip song 5 or 6. Like you want to listen to song 12 just as much as you want song 1 because it's just the album is so damn good.
And a little tangent talking about Live, they were the best live band I had ever seen for a long time. Like you wouldn't think
Out of this world.
They're called live, but when they performed live, it was amazing.
How does that come in a conversation though? Who's your best band live? No, what I'm asking you is who's the favorite live band? Live. No, wait, that's what I'm saying.
Who's on first?
Right, exactly. How does that?
I don't know. Third base.
I used to joke about, so over in England, one of the models of Ford they had was the Ka, which was KA. And I used to always joke, I was like, people in Jersey would not do well with this because they'd be like, hey, Ma, I got a Ford Ka. And they'd be like, a what? A Ford Ka. Okay, what kind of car? And I used to joke around about that all the time.
Eric is asleep.
And on that bombshell.
All right, no, we still need Donovan's end answer.
I thought he answered. No, you.
Yeah, but I'm changing again. That's what happens when I listen to all your answers and I want to change my answer.
Now it's Mercury. It's a Mercury Mercure is now the answer.
Oh, a Ford Sierra Cosworth. Yeah.
X4 Ti.
It's got to be the X4 Ti.
No, he needs a Mercury Sable wagon. Okay, Mercury Sable wagon.
A Chevrolet Beretta 3.4.
He's an HHR kind of guy.
Oh man, we have gone there yet again. Another episode
to the podcast.
Well, then if we're gonna do that, then I have to ask this one: what music do you listen to in a Panas?
And a Panos? I don't know what a Panos is.
Panas, Panos, it's all the same. It's like Haribo.
You don't listen to anything because it doesn't run and it stays buried in your garage.
For the listeners out there who don't have a visual with us, Donovan looks like he's been triggered with the HHR comment. He's getting ready to pounce.
You see me sharpening my knife back here. No, I'd go 911 GT3 RS, modern vintage, and Stone Temple Pilots purple disc. Like those two would be pretty good.
Good call.
Yeah. I like that. Very nice.
Okay.
All right, Brett. Go ahead.
I'm going to add one in. So instead of just albums, soundtracks that go well with, that you would put with riding in a car that you would listen to.
Baby Driver with a WRX. Every other answer is invalid.
True.
I don't know. For me, I think the Crow soundtrack is definitely something I've done because the whole way through, that's a good soundtrack.
Tron Legacy all day long.
The Forrest Gump soundtrack is amazing.
I give you that.
Despicable Me 3 has a great soundtrack too.
Fail.
Kids with kids.
Top Gun soundtrack.
Ooh, that's a good call.
That's a good one too. Yeah.
Car.
What?
Donovan would be in a black BMW CSL 3.0 listening to the original soundtrack of Batman by Danny Elfman. That's what he'd be listening to.
Wrong answer. I think the CSL though. I don't know soundtrack wise, man. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I got a great soundtrack story.
Oh, go for it.
So in college, and if I'm speaking quietly, it's because my 13-year-old daughter was banging on the door of the office wanting to go to bed, and I was talking too loud. So I'm using my soft radio voice right now. So we were in college, and a buddy of mine owned one of the older style FJ cruisers, and he took the top off of it and put in this really like obnoxiously loud stereo, and then he painted it like at the time, I guess you would call it now like a desert fox tan. So it had this like desert tan camo thing. This guy, and his name was Ashley, he's a great guy, he's just crazy, and he put like a skull on the door, like, by the front fender, and we drove around town playing the Apocalypse Now soundtrack at full volume.
Nice.
So all right, I know that didn't go anywhere with you guys, but the whole soundtrack was what's his name, who was the Colonel Kurtz, speaking in these very insane monologues that he did in the movie. That was the majority of the soundtrack. So I just wanted to, it was a very weird experience.
That reminds me of the Devil's Reject soundtrack, where every other song is a snippet from the movie, and then they play part of the song or whatever. But to answer, I guess, my original question, the Desert Island car and the song, the car is the hard one for me to come up with. It's probably like a '98 Supra or like a C5 Corvette, just because those were the cars that I grew up loving. But the album is actually a Siamese Dream, Smashing Pumpkins.
Well, real quick, I'm gonna call Pete out because he was talking about lowering his voice because of his child, but I'm gonna say he's lying. He's trying to turn this into one of the was it ASMR type things?
Okay, we're going into late night.
We're into late night,
I
ladies.
was perusing other soundtracks to see what I was forgetting. So High Fidelity is pretty solid as a soundtrack. More recently, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse has a
The
pretty
soundtrack from that the soundtrack from that Ryan Gosling movie Drive was really, really good. That had a bunch
Drive
of-
was
Oh,
decent.
yeah.
Baby Driver was good.
Singles.
Singles was decent, as was what's the other one? The Swingers. Swingers actually had a pretty solid sort of Vegas-y sort of soundtrack that you could easily pair with a car.
I tell you what, though, I would recreate Vanishing Point with an original Challenger using the Transporter soundtrack, because that would be a good pairing there too.
It's a really good soundtrack though too is Ocean's 11.
Ocean's
Yeah.
11's good too.
That-
Pulp Fiction
that's-
also has a spectacular soundtrack.
Right.
Ferris
Pulp
Bueller
Fiction's another good one.
soundtrack. Somebody mentioned Yes earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were just saying yes. We weren't mentioning yes.
I forget
Oh,
how
my
good
bad. My bad.
Pulp Fiction soundtrack is really good too. But yeah.
That's another
but-
thing we don't get anymore, right? Is soundtracks or movie scores with movies anymore. It's like not a thing. It's like
So-
oh, whatever.
We've started to. So in our house, like when I get tired of trying to ask the Amazon listening device to play something, let's go start playing. We
Alexa.
started. You're on a headset. They can't. She can't hear you. We frequently will just pick some random movie and just ask for its soundtrack and just see what happens. And some of them are really awesome and some are really horrible. But it's been kind of fun. Like you pick some random newish movie and you're like, let's try this one. And sometimes you end up with some pretty awesome gems.
The Waiting to Exhale soundtrack.
All right, I got one. Since we're off soundtracks, here's one for you. All right, I have a song, and I need you to pair a car with it. Right?
Frozen.
Yeah.
He's gonna go with Titanic.
No.
HHR, let it go.
I actually think I actually think this is probably one of the most like sexy, evocative songs, and I could be wrong. You guys could tell me I'm totally off base.
It's a small world.
No.
Is he going to rickroll us? He's going to cut over the audio. He's going to rickroll us. That's what's going to happen.
I will never give you up.
I'm thinking Wicked Game by Chris Isaac. So if you had to put a car in that music video, what would it be?
The Lincoln. We
Lincoln
mentioned.
Continental. Wasn't there a Lincoln Continental in the video?
No, there isn't. They're on a beach. It's like some half-naked woman on a beach.
But they got there in a Continental.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. All right, bogus question. Move on.
Do your research, Eric. Jeez.
Come prepared or don't come at all.
Right. Oh, I bought a fancy fake tuck shirt, but I didn't do the research before I did the interviews.
For those of you listening at home, Eric is wearing a fancy tux t-shirt.
Thank you.
Imagine,
Thank you all.
listeners, imagine the following.
All right, Brad, take us home. Let's wrap this thing up.
I mean, I think we've spent 2 hours now waxing poetic about the relationship between cars and music. There's no denying that there is a connection between the two. I mean, can anybody deny it? I don't think anybody on this panel can. I don't know what else to say to close us out. I don't usually do the outro.
So
it was pretty good until you stumbled it.
Real quick, one thing I want to add before we do close out that I forgot to say earlier is how I was saying that music is a language that anybody can speak. So when my daughter was younger, before she was of speaking age, I had her where we'd be riding in the car listening to music, and I had it to where she was actually moving her foot to the beat of whatever song was on before she could even speak. So it's one of the things that you don't even have to be able to verbally speak to be able to appreciate music.
It's innate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's and for everybody. I mean, it seems like almost all of us are parents, right? Like one of the best feelings if you did something right is when a really kick-ass song comes on, whether you're driving or in the house, and the kids like sing along or catch on to it or want to hear it again. I mean, we did even like some song, Peaches from President of the United States of America. Like it came on and like my son at the time was, I think 2.5, and at full volume, he starts belting out like Peaches for me. And I'm like, I did something right. I'm raising this kid. Okay. It's just little moments.
So I have to throw kudos out to Brad because when my daughter was younger, I gave her the choice. I was like, what's the first band you want to see live? And she actually chose Charlie Daniels. And I throw kudos out to Brad because he saw when they were coming close by. And so I got tickets and took my daughter to it. And that was her first concert ever. And then Brad and I, we went to a couple festivals and she's went with us.
Yeah, Pedal like this. We went to Columbus to see Rock on the Range. And I mean, she went with us. She was there for the whole 3-day festival.
Yep. Got pissed at me for taking my shirt off from under my overalls. And
you went full like hay out the mouth redneck that day.
Yeah.
That's like a whole slate of other stories is not just getting to gigs, but getting to concerts where you're listening to it. I remember going to like one of the Lollapalooza was held in Connecticut somewhere, and we drove down and like the exit ramp was so backed up that we actually didn't have enough gas. So we turned the car off and traffic was slow enough that all of us would get out and we just pushed the car along as the whole way down to the exit ramp. And then we used the e-brake to get down it, knowing that we wouldn't have had gas if we had driven it all the way to the show and back, and sort of idling on into the parking lot and getting home at 4 a.m. from some concert you had driven 4 hours or 6 hours to go see. And back then hotels weren't a thing. You just got your ass back in the car and blasted music and drove the whole way home with all your friends and hoped the car held up.
I mean, thanks to GTM, I put out a feeler. I was going to a concert. The band I wanted to see was not coming anywhere near here, like near DC, but they were going to Philly. So I decided I was going to go to Philly. I bought 2 tickets because I always buy 2 tickets to concerts. And I just bank on the fact that I will probably find somebody to go with me.
So
did you
find somebody to go with you to Boys to Men?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So we went to Boys.
I've seen Boys to Men. Be careful.
But I put a feeler out in GTM and everything, and one of the guys that had joined the club from some like the HOD event. I don't even know how he became a club member. that we went. I met him for the first time at this.
He
show.
wasn't a club member, just so you were. He's in front of the reason Brad's using a backdrop is he's behind that screen right there. Brad is still stuck in his poor guy's house.
Oh my God.
No one's seen Brad since this show, except for podcasts, which is the only time Brad's allowed to talk to the outside world.
Have you seen
buying 2 tickets to a concert in Philly? This is what happens.
He puts his sweater. He puts his sweater on the other seat. My girlfriend's coming. Just wait.
Oh my God! Hey, that joke is over. I'm married now. Remember that? But anyway, yeah, I met like one of my groomsmen. Just
Married, deep fake.
Cars and music. That's where I was going with that thought.
Oh.
Until we ruined it. Ruined.
100% with the sweater.
Tell your keeper we're sorry we figured him out.
Yeah. Have you seen Misery?
One of the
This is
best
all new
parts,
to you then.
one of the best parts about that trip though was the fact that the venue itself was like 500 square feet.
Those are the best shows. Those are like by far the best shows.
Kung Fu Necktie in Fishtown in Philadelphia. Check it out. Place is amazing.
We saw Fishbone and playing like tiny basement dive place when then like Les Claypool showed up to play along with him because he was in town and random other people hopped on stage and it was the same thing. It was like this tiny little place where they're like the bar was like a guy with a folding table, but it was an actual club, but fit maybe 50 people, 100 people in there, and the show was out of this world.
Yeah, it was.
Those are the best places.
I went to see the Dillinger Escape Plan there on their final tour. They were playing in DC, but I decided to go see them in Philadelphia because I could go with my friend and we could go to Kung Fu Necktie. So I drove 3 hours. I drove 3 hours out of my way to see them live.
I feel like Donovan's
locked in the back of a van behind the panel, just to be clear.
I feel like Donovan's chomping at the bit to say something, so go ahead.
No, actually, I hadn't heard of Fishbone, and I forgot about Fishbone. But no, I was going to say it might be cool as part of this to have, maybe we put together a recommendation, of like slow driving song, fast driving song, one from each of us or something.
Yeah, and we can post it as part of the show notes on the article side. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
And
So we
in
can
case
definitely
anybody's wondering, GTM actually built a Spotify playlist that I believe is public. I think if you search for it, but I'll find a way to get it out there if anybody's interested. Just message us.
Better than that, we have a giant music server filled with music and could always use more of it.
But that's we probably can't talk about that because of Napster. So shh. It's a private server.
I bought everything that's on there.
Yeah.
Me too.
But on that note, I think Brad struck a chord with this episode. I think there's definitely you like my puns? I think there's definitely a linkage there between cars and music, and it's deep seated. It goes back to our parents. It's a whole experience for all of us. So I hope that our listeners, as they review this, and hopefully they got some laughs out of it or whatever, remember that it's not about the destination. It's all about the journey and what you do along the way. And make sure that when you take these journeys, whether they be big or small, to remember to pick up that soundtrack, whatever it is, whether you curated it yourself or it's an album or an 8-track in Pete's case, listen to some music along the way. It may change your life.
Mr. Klein.
Overlord.
So before we drop off, anybody else have any other stories they want to throw together? Just because I always have a blast doing these podcast things, and it's usually those like mini moments of people throwing out some story that somebody else did something that fired them up on.
So I got a really good story. I'm full of these because I have bought all these horrible or been involved in all these horrible vehicles that we use for tow vehicles or band touring vehicles. Like that Chrysler Town and Country wagon, that was our first touring car. And then, that Econoline I mentioned earlier in the radio show was one, but we bought this extended E350 van when I started racing. And we had a Chris Isaac CD that for some reason we kept in the whole way to VIR from Columbus, Ohio. And then the van, notice the connection I'm making here between Ford and breaking down.
It's
van
a bad thing. It's
a bad thing. And then the van broke down in West Virginia. Down there. I'm not going to give you the cross street though.
He's got his banjo. I mean,
right.
Come on.
And so we ended up having to, what ended up happening is the rotor button was loose in the distributor. So we had to, it would destroy the rotor cap and rotor button every, I don't, we would only get so far and then it would break down again. So the whole trip was us listening to Chris Isaac and replacing the distributor cap, rotor and button, all the way there and back. That is my Ford van story number 2.
Which roads
breakdown.
were you on?
I can tell you exactly. We were on the West Virginia Turnpike, right? Wait, Donovan, are you from West Virginia?
Family is. I'm not.
Name me some towns.
He's like Randall McNally over here. Like, let me get on my cross.
West Virginia.
Yeah, it was on the Turnpike somewhere. If you
And for those of you listening, Walkman, Atlas, rotary phone, they're all in the same generation, right?
Right. So we broke down near a creek. We went cricking down on the holler down in West Virginia by the van. So that's my breakdown story.
You got to be careful going to West Virginia. So my dad is actually my dad's side of the family is from West Virginia. So we used to go up there, Christmas time and stuff. And, my dad was a mechanic in the Army and always worked on cars and hot rods and stuff, but he was notorious and still is for finding these fixes because, and when I was a kid, that's when, and I'm not that old for everybody listening, but when I was a kid, there wasn't a gas station at every exit. And if there were, they closed at 10 o'clock at night or whatever. So, what we would do typically is we would go up for Christmas. So we would leave, I don't know, Christmas Eve or whatever, and we would drive all night to get there. It was only a 7-8 hour trip, but we would get there late. And so breaking down was kind of part of the journey. We didn't do it intentionally, but it kind of, became those things. And I remember there were times, one time one of the belts popped off. He had this little Datsun pickup, and I'm probably 9 or 10 years old. And on the side of the road, he had me hold my hands like this and wrapped it in kite string and then wrapped that in electrical tape and put that on and got us, just enough to get to the next exit. So it was constantly something like that, or flat tire or something. But Pete, you're going to say something.
This sounds like that story from the Christmas Story when he's holding the lug nuts in the thing.
I was going to ask if he pulled a Ralphie and let the F word fly.
F word fly.
Donovan, you just reminded me of something, kind of thinking back to those car that would be perfect for a music video. And it really links back to you is I think the runner up to the Countach is a 63 split window Corvette.
That'd be a good one. There's lots of curves and places to set ladies on too, if you want to do that. I was going to share really my only cool band story, I guess, transportation wise was, before we had the van. So we had several. I don't think any of them were Fords. We always seemed to have Dodge and something else, but there were 5 of us in the band, and we would all just kind of make our own ways there. And this one particular trip, so I went to college in Alabama, and we were playing Hilton Head, and the whole trip was doomed. I'll spare you the entire story. I'll keep the car part, but we left. A girlfriend at the time, we left. She had a Volvo. We broke down. Called a buddy of mine who had a Mark II or III GTI, who ended up come picking me up and put my drums in there. We managed to cram them in. So we drive all the way to Hilton Head. And by the way, there were 6 people at the show, and all of them came with us. That's how crappy that gig was. We got the cops called on us at the hotel, all that kind of thing. But coming back, and it's not my story, but I was involved. The guitar player whose dad owned a lot of the bars around here and used to be a promoter and, promoted a lot of the bands and all that kind of stuff back in the day, had lent them his old CRX. And what they didn't know is, I guess the brakes were bad. So the brakes were failing, and they could only use the e-brake. They didn't know that. I mean,
that's a standard feature in a CRX, just to be clear.
I guess it had worked well enough for them to get to Hilton Head, but on the way back, it pretty much completely failed. But they figured that out after they had done acid. So they drove back on acid with the e-brake, trying to get back, and it took them an exceptionally long time to get back home. And the stories, man, that we heard, the stuff they thought they saw and didn't see, and the car was supposedly on fire at one point, and it was probably not a good idea.
I got so high one time. I hope my employer's not listening to me. I got so high one time. We were with our old drummer, and we were in my station wagon. We weren't coming back from a show, but we were driving back from, we had some people that we're hanging out with, and we were on the freeway, man, and we thought we were flying down the freeway. I looked down, we were doing 45.
Oh my God.
So I have this fantasy in my head, right? Before you guys continue, I have this fantasy in my head that here you are, let's say 18, 20 years old, and you're in a band or whatever, and you go to a used car lot, and the gentleman there, older guy, probably wearing tweed, and he's like, "What are you looking for, Sonny?" And the first thing out of your mouth is, "I'm in a band." And they go, "Come right this way," right? So is there like a particular part of the used car lot where you guys are, absorbing these fantastic vehicles?
Oddly enough, they always came from family members. The first vehicle that I drove was my stepfather's old 77 Dodge van that he used to carry all his gear in the band. So you imagine being in high school and pulling up to a girl's house in a van. I mean, full size van, no windows on it. That was.
Did it say free candy on the side?
It was very rarely a good idea, and it was.
Sure, her father loved that.
So I have to ask a question because this is driving me nuts right now. Donovan, the picture behind you, the yellow one, like straight over your shoulder, the one, yep, right there. What is that?
It's a Gamund 356. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, so I have.
I'm asking because I have a poster that I think is the exact same one.
I'm right.
Room. Okay, so hang on 1 second. Let me pull this down.
There it is.
Very nice.
I was floored because I was like, because I bought this from in Wolfsburg in Germany when I was over there. Like I finished some factory tour thing and I was in some shop and I found this and loved it and bought it. And so knowing that I'd bought this there, and that's why I looked over your shoulder and I kept glancing up because I'm like, I think it's the same damn. Like, how crazy is that the same exact picture is on his wall behind him?
As a gift, there was a company, and they're probably still around, that reprinted all of the classic Porsche posters. So they've got the old racing ones, the 962s and 56s and all that stuff. And there's like 26 of them, and I've only been able to frame about 10 of them. They're all around the room. And then some of them I got, the factory or whatever. But I think that one did come from somewhere. I don't know, maybe over in Germany.
Yeah, mine was like when I have a. There's another one up there, Volkswagen Bugs, and underneath that's like F1 posters and such. But that particular one was like the one I bought myself when I was on a work trip there, and I took the rental car, a little Mercedes A-Class, and drove up to the factory for the tour. And I was like, and the fact that you had the same one right behind you was the amazing part.
That's my favorite. Can you tell what that is?
That's pretty awesome.
It's the pink pig with a naked lady on it.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
She blends right in. It's like camouflage.
Yeah. Did you say camouflage?
But cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to detract from the music stuff, but I literally was like, how is it that you have the exact same picture over your shoulder that I own, like that I'm like right in front of me all the time?
Nice. Well, guys, it's 10:30. Do we want to call it a wrap?
Yeah, I actually got to get on a call to the West Coast, believe it or not. So I do have to.
I don't believe it. I've chosen not to.
Hashtag alt facts.
Deep fakes.
You dissed my 80s. I don't know.
No, I'm down with the 80s. By down, I mean hate and loathe.
Nice. Well,
So I have
boys,
to ask, a
Go
couple
ahead.
of you guys mentioned 8 tracks. Did any of you guys have the 8-track to cassette tape adapter?
I've
They
seen
actually had an adapter.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
My uncle had one, and it was this massive thing that hung out at the front of the 8-track that you could put a cassette tape in to listen to it.
I was going to say earlier, we could have an entirely separate podcast on just the methods to get music to play through car stereos over the years.
100%.
The number of things that we all went through, the local transmitters versus the tapes on a string versus the wires that if you didn't, you had it plugged into like some other player, and if you didn't lean the wire in the right direction, the treble wouldn't come out, the other way the bass wouldn't come out, this way the words wouldn't come out.
All we wanted was an auxiliary port. That's what we were really striving for.
And we never got one. So instead it was like the passenger would be like, you'd start having to hit them from the driver's seat because they like let the wire go down so you couldn't hear the music right.
Raise your hand if you had one of those idiotic RF transmitters to do your own local.
Everybody's had at least one of
Come
those.
on. Jeez, what a mess.
Even better.
Even better, the microphone ones that you could actually tune to somebody else's station.
Yeah.
The shortwave ones. So as you drove by somebody else, you could like talk on their stereo. Those were
not even just that, but like nowadays we've got Spotify and Pandora and all that crap. But I try not to touch my phone when I'm driving now, like just as a principle. But when I was like 16, 17 years old, I'd be damned if I didn't have my 150-page CD book and I'm sitting there at 50 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, flipping through trying to find the perfect CD because in my head there's one song that I want to listen to at this exact moment, and I gotta find that fucking CD.
Yep, we've all done that. It started with
Yeah,
like the
100%.
16 from the you flip the visor down, you start looking through it.
Nice.
Well done.
And Rob, to the visor CD holders, I used to do autocrossing with Eric back like just after high school, and I had one up one day and forgot to take it out of the car. And sure enough, I'm like, wait a minute, where did my CDs go? And then like cars are spinning around the autocross track because they're slipping on them. I lost Rock La Familia, the Jay-Z album, because of that.
Yep, I
Bring
got
back memories, Brad.
Mountain Man. I got books of those
Bring
things
back
all over the
night-
house.
Yeah, right.
Still. I refuse to get rid of them. I still have them,
Yeah,
We're gonna be in the Smithsonian soon.
just in case.
But on that bombshell, all right, boys, I think it's time to wrap it up. I got an early meeting tomorrow, so
I just got kids that'll get me up at 5, but at this
yeah,
point,
right.
you're used to
No
it.
worries.
yeah,
no
I've got a
worries.
dog that's gonna wake me up at 5:30.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough for coming on yet again. Pete, Donovan, Mountain Man, and Rob. Brad's always here, but thank you guys for coming on. I think this was a lot of fun, and we'll hope to see you guys again on another episode.
Yes, please.
Enjoy
Definitely.
Hey, I want to thank everybody for coming on tonight from WGTM in Washington, D.C., from the basement studio in a discreet, quiet location. Thank you for tuning in tonight. WGTM signing off.
Thank you, Pete.
Hey,
Love
besides
it.
me, is anybody else actually in DC?
No.
That's what I thought. Just checking.
No, word from our
we're
sponsor,
signing
the
on from
GTM Brothers
Rob's
Mulch.
basement.
GTM Brothers Mulch. Yeah.
GTM
Our
Brothers.
sponsors.
Well
Yeah,
done.
right.
GTM
All right,
Brothers.
boys. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Good
Thanks,
times,
guys. Had a
everybody.
great time. Pleasure.
Peace.